Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We will be getting started in just a few minutes here. You're welcome to use the chat to send in your comments and questions throughout the session and the summit. My name is Irene and I'll be your MC today. Please note that it will not be possible for you to unmute your microphone. So we encourage you to join in on the conversation through the chat. Dory, would you mind switching to the slide for the technical instructions, please? Thank you. We would love to know who you are. Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a warm welcome to the third ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit, an initiative of ASEAN and organized by the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, the Inclusive Business Action Network, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It is my pleasure to invite Mr. Buntung Aksmi, Chair, Director General, Department of SME Promotion, Ministry of Industry and Commerce, Lao PDR, to now give his opening remarks. Let us see if I see that he is here.
Mr. Kaveh Sabadi, Deputy Executive Secretary, the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. Mr. Christian Chan, Executive Director, Inclusive Business Action Network. Dr. Alexander Boma, Head of South and Southeast Asia Division, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Distinguished guests, fellow my ASEAN colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to UNESCAP, IBAN, and OECD for their support in organizing the third ASEAN IB Summit and for their continued support toward the promotion of inclusive business in ASEAN. I would also like to thank my colleague from ASEAN Coordinating Committee on Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, or ASME, for your commitment toward the cause since 2018. In addition, I would like to thank all speakers and participants who made the time to participate in and attend today's summit. Why IBAN? First, when IBAN approaches the ASME to carry a torch on inclusive business from the Philippines 2017 ASEAN Chairmanship, the concept of inclusive business was relatively new in the region. Nevertheless, we saw its alignment with the mission statement of the ASEAN Strategic Action Plan on SME Development 2016-2025. To, I quote, by 2025, create globally competitive, resilient, and innovative MSMEs that are seamlessly integrated to ASEAN community and inclusive development in the region. As we all know, the MSMEs account for a large share of establishment in the ASEAN member states, accounting for between 88.8% and up to 99.9% of total establishments. They also contribute to between 51.7% and 97.2% of employment. Given their widespread presence, the MSMEs and SME development agenda are a good vehicle to address inclusive growth and effort to expand opportunities of livelihood in the region. We are glad to have pursued the effort to promote the inclusive business, especially during this time when businesses, particularly the micro and small enterprises, are struggling in the face of COVID-19 crisis. According to the survey conducted by the Asia Pacific MSME Trade Coalition, in the early months of the crisis, roughly 2/3 of ASEAN MSMEs had less than 2 months worth of cash reserve left in April, while over a third expected to lay off over 14% of their staff. It is almost 6 months later. These businesses may be worse off than they were in April. Some may have hunted business activities on target. Compounding this impact is the fact that many of our strongest sectors are hit by travel ban and other restrictions. Our tourist and hospitality industries, for example, account for a significant share of national GDP in many countries. Anecdotal evidence suggests grim scenario for the micro and small enterprises for as long as we are in this pandemic. Thus, to the theme of inclusive business partnership to address challenges ahead couldn't be more apt. Given the vital role of MSMEs in the economy, it is in the best interest of all to form strategic partnership to develop viable MSMEs. While the governments have introduced stimulus measures to Thai business during the pandemic, resources need to be allocated wisely, and this is where the private sector strength, expertise, and resources could be leveraged. The micro and small enterprises, particularly, even before the pandemic, face significant challenges and are vulnerable due to their lack of access to resources, skills, technology, and markets. Inclusive business certainly have a part to play in our effort to support the micro and small enterprises in facing these challenges. By integrating the micro and small enterprises into their business model, either by making the micro and small enterprises their suppliers, distributors, or retailers, transfer of technologies, expertise, and access to new markets and finance are some of the ways that micro and small enterprises may benefit from this integration. I would like to encourage my ASEAN colleagues who are present here today to explore and consider the inclusive business approaches in formulating your national and regional policies. In this connection, I hope that the guideline for the promotion of inclusive business in ASEAN will be a useful reference document for ASEAN policymakers, both for national and regional level initiatives. From our standpoint, as SME development agencies, in advocating policies for development of a vibrant and resilient MSMEs, the inclusive business model compels us to connect the dynamics between the government, private sector, and low-income and poor communities, including the micro and small enterprises, in achieving national and regional objectives. The guideline provides a greater understanding of these dynamics for ASEAN member states and the regions, collectively to move on to consider integrating inclusive business in their national and regional policies. I hope that all of us leave this summit today inspired and enriched with new knowledge and a deeper understanding on the inclusive business, its practical implication, and the enabling environment that made inclusive business integration possible. As will be shared by our esteemed speakers today, and they have both with concrete collaborative ideas and impetus for us to continue to promote inclusive business in ASEAN. Again, I would like to express my appreciation to our collaborators, the UNSCAP, IBAN, and OECD, and my ex-ME colleagues for your untiring effort and in realizing today's summit. Last but not least, all participants present today. With that, I wish everyone fruitful session today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Doang Sawan, for your opening remarks. I would now like to invite Mr. Kaveh Sehedi, Deputy Executive Secretary, United Nations ASCAP, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and good morning. And thank you, Excellencies, distinguished guests, my dear colleagues in the room and elsewhere, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for us at ASCAP to organize this third ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit under the ASEAN umbrella, along with our partners from the Inclusive Business Action Network and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, IBAN, and OECD. And my colleagues, Christian and Alexander, will be following me in this opening session. We met in this forum only 1 year ago, but in the span of that 1 year, COVID-19 has dramatically changed the world that we live in. After years of progress, poverty and hunger in our region are on the increase. And in a way, the pandemic is challenging not only the possibility of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in the future, but also many of the achievements made so far. But if these past few months have shown us anything, it is that change is certainly possible. For Southeast Asia, that change will need to be underpinned by tackling inequality, by bridging the digital divide, greening the economy, and upholding human rights and good governance practices. And these are the pillars that were identified by the United Nations Secretary General for building a more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive Southeast Asia in the aftermath of COVID. So in a way, the question in front of us today is whether inclusive business can be a vital part of the transformations needed in Southeast Asia to put Southeast Asia on a path to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and in helping address the social and economic challenges posed by COVID-19. The potential is clearly there. Inclusive businesses have already been providing goods, services, and livelihoods on a commercially viable basis to people across our region that are so often left behind. Inclusive businesses are delivering essential and affordable medical services, including maternal care, to low-income groups in urban and peri-urban communities in India, and making medical consultations possible through mobile applications in Myanmar. Inclusive agribusinesses are providing increased income opportunities to tea farmers in Vietnam and rice farmers in Thailand. Inclusive businesses are also offering greener energy alternatives to low-income groups, from selling biomass cookers to remote areas in northern Vietnam, to enabling household rural electrification through solar grid systems in Cambodia. These are but a few of the examples. But beyond the examples, we see three fundamental ways in which inclusive businesses are helping to deliver a green, inclusive, and resilient ASEAN. Firstly is women's economic empowerment. By definition, inclusive businesses support those further behind and include low-income women in their value chains. Many provide income opportunities to women, often low-income women. And with women so often left behind, catalyzing women's economic empowerment is going to be critical for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and from recovering from the shock of COVID-19. Second is MSME development. The global pandemic has had a devastating impact on already vulnerable MSMEs. During the initial 2 months of the pandemic, over 60% of SMEs may have closed in the Philippines and Laos PDR, and over 40% in Thailand and Indonesia. And the Director General mentioned a few of these other figures before me in terms of the impact that MSMEs have seen. But inclusive businesses support MSMEs in their value chains, providing market access, developing skills, and facilitating access to finance. So their role in building back better is critical. Thirdly is digital transformation. The pandemic has exposed the widening digital divide between and within countries. Inclusive businesses are really born innovators. They often introduce digital innovations and, in the process, enable small economic actors to benefit from digital services and build digital skills. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, inclusive businesses can certainly show the way for scaling up the role of business to do good. But for this to happen, we need innovative government policies that incentivize businesses to focus on creating social and environmental value, as well as economic value. And in this regard, ASEAN has very much shown leadership in taking action at the national level, as well as at the ASEAN-wide level, with the support of the ASEAN Secretariat and the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on SME Development. The recent endorsement of the regional guidelines for the promotion of inclusive business in ASEAN by the ASEAN economic ministers is a clear sign of this. And again, this is something that the Director General mentioned before me. But to confront the challenges of our region, we need not small change, but transformative change. So continued support for SMEs, for women entrepreneurs and innovative business models during the Brunei ASEAN chairmanship in 2021 will be vital for continuing our inclusive business journey. Before concluding, allow me to thank again the ASEAN Secretariat, our partners at IBAN and the OECD, with whom we're working to support inclusive businesses in ASEAN and at the regional level. It really is a great pleasure joining forces on supporting some of the most promising avenues for bringing positive change at scale. We look forward to future collaboration to support the implementation of the policies and recommendations that have emerged from our work and that we'll be speaking about for the rest of this session. With that, I thank you and hand back.
Thank you, Mr. Sahedi, for your opening remarks. I would now like to invite Mr. Christian Yan, Executive Director of the Inclusive Business Action Network, to deliver his opening remarks.
Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome you this morning to the third ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit. Over the last 3 years, the ASEAN Secretariat and the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on SME Development, ACSME, have driven the IB agenda in a way nobody would have thought of, actually. If I look at it, there was a vision in 2017 when ASEAN embraced inclusive business for the first time, that inclusive business will become an important and continuing work stream for ACSME and taken up by the member states. And now coming together today for the third time and looking at it, at the endorsement of the guidelines on the promotion of inclusive business in ASEAN and the IB awards are clear evidence of this vision really coming true. Therefore, I would like to start really this opening remarks in congratulate the ASEAN member states and the ASEAN Secretariat for coming together today, really to the third ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit. There has been quite some achievements over the last 3 years. The development of inclusive business policy in the member states are very encouraging, and we are very curious to hear more on the further developments today. Now this year, the summit's discussions focus is around partnerships and the challenges that lie ahead of us, especially the challenges due to COVID-19. Collaboration models will be an important feature when tackling these challenges. With IBAN, the Inclusive Business Action Network, we have quite a variety of different partnerships and collaboration models. These reach from knowledge partnership on our online platform to collaboration with various partners in different countries, different sectors, on different levels. We collaborate with almost all actors in the inclusive business ecosystem, from financial institutions, intermediaries, academia, bilateral donor agencies, governments, companies, and NGOs. And why do we have such an approach? Well, I want to give two main reasons. First, having worked for more than 20 years in the field of development cooperation and 5 years in the private sector, I'm personally convinced that in the long run, it is more efficient, it has more impact, and it is most of the time more sustainable if we collaborate. In the case of promoting the scaling of inclusive business, you need a whole set of partners in order to make a change and create an impact. At IBAN, we also see the advantages of having a more holistic approach and working with both entities, supporting companies to scale their inclusive business on the one hand, and also assisting governments to improve framework conditions for inclusive businesses. And through our public-private dialogue, we bring both groups together and contribute to a better understanding of each one's need and interest. We also support a peer-to-peer approach when we worked with ASEAN over the last 2.5 years. In this context, I'm really also happy to inform you that ASEAN has developed into a role model for inclusive business policy development in other countries and regions. Well, let me elaborate a little bit on that. So last year, the sidelines of the second ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit, we facilitated a South-South dialogue with ASEAN and also Nigerian policymakers, which led at the end to the start of an inclusive business policy development program in Nigeria this year. In addition, policymakers from Zambia were also impressed by the progress in ASEAN and also started this process now this year. We therefore also would like to welcome representatives of those two countries at the summit today. These are really fantastic news for inclusive business policy development. But let me put out now also a challenge to the forum today. So far, we have made together great progress through the collaboration of committed individuals and institutions. And now it's maybe the time to go beyond the familiar. COVID-19 has changed everything. It has also taught us a lesson that only when we work together, we can stop the destructive and deadly nature of this pandemic. In response to COVID-19, the calls are made now for more collaboration. This means we have to go beyond our comfort zone and beyond our silos we are normally working in. Therefore, IBAN calls really for disruptive collaboration. Disruptive in a sense that we really go out of our comfort zone. The guidelines on the promotion of inclusive business in ASEAN spell out the need to reach out to other pillars and working groups in ASEAN to spread the word and identify the common goal and work together. The COVID-19 response gives us also the opportunity to work closer together and to enter new collaboration with new partners. I wish the summit provides the impetus for such disruptive collaboration in ASEAN, but also globally, as we are transporting ASEAN and achievements to Africa. I would like to close in thanking UNESCO and the OECD for the cooperation in supporting ASEAN in developing the IB policy further, and therefore ultimately contributing also to the achievement of the SDGs and inclusive growth. I wish all a very fruitful discussion today and a lot of inspiration for new collaboration models. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jan, for your opening remarks. I would now like to invite Dr. Alexander Böhme, Head of South and Southeast Asia Division, OECD, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, excellencies, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to also welcome you to this third ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit under the ASEAN umbrella, along with our partners, the Inclusive Business Action Network and UN-ESCAP, a distinguished UN organization. The Executive Secretary of UN-ESCAP said it already nicely. We need to defend SDGs in the face of the COVID pandemic challenge, and Christian was just calling for disruptive collaboration to tackle it. And whilst we believe that government has a pivotal responsibility to realize social justice outcomes, we are glad to be part of a global effort to maximize also the role that businesses can play. You know, for a number of decades already, the OECD has taken the view that businesses can drive better working conditions, integrity, productivity enhancement, and environmental management through their supply chains. Already in 1976, we launched our guidelines for multinational enterprises, which are today adhered to by 44 governments representing all regions of the world and accounting for 85% of foreign direct investment. Recognizing that applying a company-level standard throughout a global supply chain is not always straightforward, And therefore, we launched the first government-backed standard for corporate due diligence on responsible business conduct in 2018. That covers all sectors of the economy and addresses a range of risks to good responsible business conduct. My colleague will later address the agricultural sector perspective in a panel. We have been also very privileged to work with fora like the G20 to build up better ecosystems for inclusive business. For instance, by ensuring conducive laws and regulations, well-functioning financial infrastructure, and efforts that could bring bigger pools of capital into the inclusive business space. In 2018, for instance, we helped to explore the role that public procurement policies can play in promoting inclusive business. That represents a pool of around 12% of GDP in OECD countries. And if inclusive businesses have access to this pool, that would be very beneficial. We have looked how responsible business conduct standards can be introduced into tendering documentation, how to develop an appropriate impact assessment methodology that could measure the effectiveness of procurement in achieving responsible business objectives. We have also been working with ASEAN policies, and the ASEAN AXME remark are very welcomed in this respect to facilitate the development of the smaller firms that inclusive business count upon as suppliers and merchants. This has included efforts to build up awareness of inclusive business amongst regional, micro, small, and medium enterprise agencies and business associations. For example, we have developed a set of videos showcasing examples of inclusive business from the region and a set of criteria to grant an annual Inclusive Business Award. And as the Executive Director from UNESCO said, realizing the important role that business has to play in implementing the SDGs and inclusive and sustainable growth more broadly. This has become more urgent now in the light of COVID-19, and Christian was calling for a need to disruptive collaboration to that extent, which we would very much also endorse. Ladies and gentlemen, in the wake of the pandemic, we have also seen new risks of fraud and financial misconduct emerging in global supply chains, for instance, and the deterioration of working conditions in some companies hit badly by lockdowns or the drying up of orders from international buyers. Also, where companies have been forced to redirect their business activity sharply, we have seen some rushing through due diligence measures and site inspections. But we also have seen how socially conscious firms can play an important role in relief efforts. Companies subscribed, for example, to our G7 Business for Inclusive Growth initiatives, and have now dedicated over 38 billion euros in relief plans or support to their employees, communities, clients, and suppliers. In closing, we are honored to contribute to this important ASEAN Summit and look forward to hearing different views on an impressive list of speakers representing a range of social partners. I thank again our partners in ESCAP and IBAN for the great cooperation and the organizers for excellent preparation, and wish you all an interesting and excellent meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Alexander Böhme. And now, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our opening session. We will now have a presentation on the overview of inclusive business in ASEAN and the progress of mainstreaming the promotion of inclusive business in ASEAN. I have the pleasure to invite Ms. Marta Perez-Cuso, Economic Affairs Officer, Trade, Investment and Innovation Division, ESCAP, to make the presentation.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. To deliver the SDGs by 2030 and build back better, we will need a vibrant and innovative private sector to be able to seize the opportunities to solve the problems that hamper progress and to take solutions to scale. My name is Marta Perez-Cuso, and my mission at the United Nations ESCAP is to promote inclusive technologies and innovation policies that leave no one behind. And promoting inclusive business is one of the avenues to do so. And this is why I'm here today. I would also like to hear why you're here today, what do you expect from this summit, and what you would like to share with us. And our tool to do that will be the chat. So please feel free to come in and post and share why you're here today. It is a great pleasure for me now to share with you a quick overview of what is IB, why it is important, and how governments in ASEAN at the national and at the regional level are promoting inclusive business. Next, please. There is a wide spectrum of market-based approaches between the non-profit organizations and the traditional business that try to support social good and environmental sustainability. And these include traditional NGOs that introduce for-profit activities to earn some income to finance their activities. It also includes social enterprises that have a double bottom line. It includes business that incorporate responsible business conducts and strategic corporate responsibility actions. And it also includes inclusive business. Today, we will focusing on inclusive business, but all these different approaches are important and complementary to some extent. Inclusive business provides goods, services, and livelihoods to people living at the base of the economic pyramid and engage them as suppliers, distributors, retailers, and consumers. There's a very long definition. What's important is that inclusive businesses bring systemic solutions to the relevant problems of those living at the base of the economic pyramid. So we are talking about solutions at scale that are relevant for low-income and vulnerable groups. Next, please. I've done a bit of theory, so let's look about how does in reality look inclusive business. We find a lot of inclusive business in the agribusiness sector. And here you have 4 examples from across the region of real companies. We haven't provided the names, but these are examples of real companies in agribusiness that are supporting those at the base of the economic pyramid, providing them with economic opportunities. So for example, we have a firm in Thailand that engages over 3,000 smallholder farmers to produce organic jasmine rice, chicken eggs, and coconut water. And the additional profit that they make by producing organic products, it's given back to the farmers. So the farmers are able to earn an income above the market rate. In addition to the agribusiness sector, we can also find inclusive business models in many other sectors that are relevant for low-income people and marginalized groups. Next slide, please. We can find solutions provided by companies in training, in renewable energy, in affordable housing, etc. Again, here are some of the examples that we can find in this ASEAN region from across the 10 countries. You will see examples from a company providing solar panel to over 150,000 persons, mostly low-income people in Cambodia. And this makes, next slide, please. This makes us explain why it's important to promote inclusive business. It's because we can realize triple wins for companies as they see new market opportunities and opportunities for branding and visibility. Inclusive business also provide opportunities to low-income people because they offer access to affordable goods and services and decent income generation. It also provides access to technology, expertise, and markets for micro and small enterprises. Finally, inclusive business also provide a win to governments because they help lift people out of poverty at scale. And next, please. ASEAN governments, realizing the importance of and the benefits of promoting inclusive business, back in 2017, decided to commit to support inclusive business. Since then, a lot has happened. We have had 3 ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit. The first one took place in 2017. And as a result of that summit, the ASEAN IB framework was adopted. And ACME, the ASEAN Coordinating Committee for MSME Development in ASEAN, took to the task to advance the inclusive business agenda within the ASEAN member states. And leadership at ASEAN endorsed the promotion of inclusive business. Then in 2018, it started the ASEAN Inclusive Business Policy Development Program organized by IBAN, where a number of, where 2 focal points per each ASEAN member state was designed to promote inclusive business, and 3 policy forums took place. And this was primarily to build awareness and start developing capacities for promoting inclusive business. Last year in Bangkok, we held the 2nd ASEAN Inclusive Business. And there was also the publication of a regional report that reviewed the advances made in enabling a policy and environment for IB in ASEAN. Again, ASEAN leadership continued to promote and encourage ASEAN member states to promote inclusive business. This year, again, we have achieved another great milestone. And this is the endorsement by the ASEAN economic ministers of the regional guidelines for promoting inclusive business in ASEAN. These guidelines were just endorsed last month, so it's quite a recent milestone. And the guidelines provide an outline of how inclusive business can be supported at the national level and what institutional setup is required to do so. The guidelines also provide recommendations on how to promote inclusive business further at the regional level. The guidelines provide many of suggestions of best practices to promote IB. And I would like just to highlight what some of those suggestions include. Next slide, please. In the guidelines, there are 12 policy instruments that are highlighted to that governments can decide to may want to choose from to promote inclusive businesses. A first action or decision that governments can take is to put in place an IB promotion strategy and action plan. This may be followed by the institutionalization of IB promotion by setting up IB policy, focal points in government agencies, but also in private sector associations, and the establishment of a national steering committee. Other actions that governments can take is establishing an accreditation system to recognize inclusive business, generating awareness among policymakers and the private sector, establishing a dedicated facility to provide inclusive business coaching to those mainstream businesses or social enterprises that would like to develop an inclusive business model. Also, governments can provide investment incentives. Next slide, please. Explore the opportunities for including inclusive business in public procurement, support the reduction of impact investment risk, try to align the promotion of inclusive business with other programs that support SME development, social enterprises, or agriculture or other sectors development. Also, 2 other suggestions provided in the guidelines are to, of course, monitor and report on the impact that efforts to promote inclusive business have, and to create synergies at the regional level. We will hear much more in detail about these guidelines in the last session that we will have at the end of today, 3:45 Bangkok time. Now, let me give you a few examples. Next slide, please. Of what several ASEAN member states have been doing during the past 3 years to promote inclusive business. The Philippines was the first ASEAN country to put in place a policy to promote inclusive business. It has integrated inclusive business into the Board of Investment Promotion Policy and provides financial incentives to registered inclusive business, among others. Myanmar has already a strategic framework to support IB promotion. Cambodia has committed to promote IB. It has already established IB focal points in key ministries and private sector associations, and is finalizing the design of its national framework for promoting inclusive business, the IBIC strategy. Moreover, inclusive business is included in the draft SME development policy, and it's part of the National Policy on Science, Technology and Innovation 2020 to 2030. In Malaysia, inclusive business has been included in the National Entrepreneurship Policy 2030. In Indonesia, a market scoping study has been developed as a study on IB in the wellness tourism. And Vietnam has also conducted a landscape study of inclusive business to help inform policy decisions. We will hear much more and in much detail about these advances made from the policymakers themselves in the following sessions. Now, I am excited to hear directly from our speakers how they have been promoting inclusive businesses, how might we leverage the opportunities of inclusive businesses to promote the social and to promote solutions to address the social and economic challenges that COVID-19 is putting us to us today. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussions.
Thank you, Ms. Perez Cuzo, for your presentation. Now we move to our high-level session on inclusive business partnerships to address challenges ahead, where government representatives and CEOs of inclusive businesses will share their views on how inclusive business can address the social and economic challenges that citizens, SMEs, and governments in ASEAN face to respond and recover from the COVID-19 crisis. This session will be moderated by Mr. Jonathan Wong, Chief of Technology and Innovation, United Nations ESCAP. I would now like to invite Mr. Wong to open up the dialogue.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Let me start firstly by thanking the ASEAN member states for your commitment and indeed action on this agenda, and our partners, ASEAN Secretariat, IBAN and OECD. I think there's certainly, it's been an honor for ESCAP to be involved in this journey with partners in ASEAN member states, and also a real sense of pride in the sense of kind of the leadership and innovation in terms of policy and action that ASEAN member states have shown. And as Christian mentioned, how it's now having an impact on business and economic policy around the world and indeed in Africa. So I think there's a certain level of pride there that the ASEAN region is actually leading the world. And I'm not, that's no word of a lie on this really important and innovative agenda. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as Irene mentioned, welcome to the high-level session on inclusive business partnerships to address challenges ahead. In this dialogue, panelists will share advances made by governments in particular to create enabling environments, policy environments for inclusive business, showcase some innovative business models, and identify where public-private partnerships will be most important to promote IB, which is indeed a theme of the summit we're here today. Let me briefly introduce the panelists right now. Firstly, we have His Excellency Mr. Heng Sokong, State Secretary, Ministry of Industry, Science, Technology and Innovation, Cambodia. We have Ms. Tring Huang, Director of Policy Development, Agency for Enterprise Development, Ministry of Planning and Investment, Vietnam. We have Mr. Rizal Naini, CEO SME Corp Malaysia. We have Ms. Pasisa Juan, co-founder EcoStore Sustainable Lifestyle, the Philippines. We have Mr. Perry Rivera, President and CEO of Manila Water Philippine Ventures and Manila Water Asia Pacific, the Philippines. And last but not least, Mr. Gil Gonzalez, Executive Director, ASEAN Business Advisory Council. Before we start, let me pose a question to the audience. And I'd be very grateful if I would like to ask the audience to share, using the chat function, examples of what inclusive business can do to respond to and recover from the COVID-19 crisis. So I'd be very welcome the audience's thoughts on that. And indeed, start posting any questions you may have for the panelists. Even I know, I appreciate you haven't heard them speak yet, but I'm sure you've got some burning questions that you would like to ask. So please do that. Okay, so let's get going. Let me first start by turning to His Excellency Heng Sokong. You have committed to promote inclusive business and are seeking to put in place a national framework, the Inclusive Business Enabling Environment for Cambodia, or IBEC strategy for short. Could you tell us a bit more about the key elements of your IBEC strategy and the actions that you have taken to promote IB in that respect? And specifically, and with reference to the theme of this forum, what type of public-private partnerships do you think will be necessary to support and respond to and recover from the COVID-19 crisis? I appreciate there are about 10 questions in that sentence, but over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Of course, Cambodia is one of the member states of ASEAN country that we have played a crucial role also within this IB strategies. Right now, Cambodia is also making a very concrete measure within the COVID-19. As you may have heard, it's not impact only Cambodian, but the whole world to our economies. With the help of the IBAN and UNESCAP, and of course, with also the support from our consultant, Dr. Amin, Cambodian have already finished our landscape studies back in 2019, and we hope for ESCAP also to publish our new edition for Khmer versions of this strategy action plan, and especially for our summary report that we could have this for submitted to the ASEAN meetings in 2022 in Cambodia when we are a host for this summit. The IBA study examined 118 interviews and 37 of them and rated 34 companies through a pilot testing the IBA accreditation tool specifically developed for Cambodia. Our government and many stakeholders in other ministries and business associations were closely involved in the study. And as what says the IBC, the Inclusive Business for Enabling Environment in Cambodia, is one of the most successful, as I told you, especially within this COVID-19 period, that the triple win, even the government, even the private sectors, and also the workers itself, the joint hand together, that making our SME mostly to go digital. That's why the government of Cambodia have considered on this and conveys and give more duties and responsibility for the Ministry of the Industries and Handicraft to be the Ministry of Industry, Science, Technologies, and Innovations. We found nothing real and potential inclusive business, mostly in agro-business, insurance, microfinance, energy service, and also the affordable housings, that highly innovative model. It is also estimated within our enabling for the inclusive model. Within the next 3 years, by 2023, IB firm in Cambodia is going to show the large increase in revenue and social reach. They could create around 700,000 new income generation activity, up from 0.3 million in 2018, and so around 120,000 low-income households through housing and municipal services, up from 50,000 in 2018, and create energy access to 0.2 million people, up from 0.1 million in 2018, and provide insurance to 1.1 million low-income persons, up from 0.7 million in 2018, and also to contribute to grow value-added and tax income to the government in amount of more than 100 million US dollar, up from 47 million in 2018. Based on this study for the IBCs has been proposed, we have 9 key recommendations. I think Martha has already recommended for 12 key recommendations, but in Cambodian, we have suggested 9 key recommendations. Everyone here already knows about that. The first one is the approval of the IB strategy and action plan that Cambodian already made it. And the second one, the establishment of the IB champion and creating a dedicated institution set up, that we have the MICH working group that is included even the government, even the private sectors and all the stakeholders, including for that to join hands together, and especially the SME Association also play a very crucial role for doing this IB model for Cambodia. The third one is the advocacy work together with business association. And the fourth one is the setting up the official for IB company accreditation systems. And the fifth one is the creating an IB business coaching facility. And sixth one is IB risk reduction fund for IB investor. And seven is investment incentives through CDCs. And the eighth one is further studies on linkage between the SME promotion policies to IB. And the ninth one is the dedicating IB reporting system, as what I said for that. We're going to be reported, making the whole health report by 2022. And we're going to be submitted to the ASEAN Summit within 2022 when we are hosted this summit. And last but not least, the regional exchange on IB is also quite important thing that we could consider between Cambodian and ASEAN member states. And also we are very pleased to succeed that within this crisis of the COVID-19, we should consider together even within ASEAN member states, also the IBAN, UNESCAP, OECD, how we could create the fund, what we can call the COVID-19 assistance funds within the IB model company. What we're gonna provide is just simply for the technical support or the technical development fund that we could increase the development of the value chain or the some kind like the production chain of each factory or each company that is mainly focused on the IB sections. First one, we can increase their value chains or not only produce like kind of like the normal product, but even though the product that is sold for the COVID-19 services, such as mask, alcohol, gel, or whatever like that, or some medical equipment that is served to this period of COVID-19 pandemic. And we are also looking forward to the ASEAN's member states to join hands together on how we accelerate or encourage all the IB model by providing the IB award within ASEAN member states. Before we do have the what we call the social award for the ASEAN, so that we could also consider about the new thing that we call the IB award within these ASEAN member states as well. And last but not least, I would also suggest it to all the member states, especially the IBAN and UNESCAP, to consider that we could suggest to WTO on how we could help accelerate the IB model company within ASEAN member states. As Martha already mentioned that the IB company is the one who make the triple win. Even win for the government itself, it win for the entrepreneurs, and also win for the workers. Within that, we do hope that the rich country, the developed country, could provide the quota-free or duty-free or exemption or tax exemption to those IB model company within ASEAN member states. This is what is most important within this or after March of the COVID-19. By doing so, let me a little bit highlight a very small concern of Cambodian that we even though delay of our strategic action plan by the COVID-19 almost 1 year. As you may know, it hit a lot, not only Cambodian, but all the whole world. So that within the approval from our cabinet, especially for the action plan of these of the COVID-19 of these IB strategies, we have right now making up the what we call the new version of the IB strategy from English version to our own language version, the Khmer versions. And we are also working very hard with our local partners and also with other line ministry to insert all the concerns of how impact of the COVID-19 to the MSME and how we can make all our MSME to go digital especially, and how we could use our technology, science, and innovation to convey the most impact enterprise to get least impact by these strategies, and especially after the COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for a very comprehensive response and very concrete actions you laid out there for Cambodia, and also a huge congratulations for the establishment of the new ministry and your appointment. From our perspective, work on IB, it's great to see industry and innovation appearing in the same ministry name. So I think that bodes well for IB development in Cambodia. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you soon as well. Fingers crossed.
Of course.
Thank you. Let me turn now to Huong from Vietnam. You have also committed to promote IB in Vietnam under Vietnam's chairmanship of ASEAN. You've actively promoted IB in ASEAN. What actions has your government taken to promote IB? So I'll pose that question to you, and I believe you have a one or two slides. So over to the technical team to try and pull those up. Over to you, Huong.
Thank you, Jonathan. Can you hear me clearly?
Very well.
Okay, it's great. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today. It's my second time to attend the ASEAN IB Summit. As you know that in Vietnam, the IB discussion have been going on since 2012 when the ADB made the first IB landscape study in cooperation with the NPI Ministry of Planning and Investment and the VCCI, the Vietnam Chamber of Commercial Industries. And in the 2015, the government included the social enterprises in their new company law. And since 2015, the impact investment are increasingly emphasizing innovation and inclusion for the bottom pyramid. As I shared in the second ASEAN IB Summit last year, the 2019 IB landscape study supported by ESCAP and IBAN is a milestone for assessing the IB market in our country and the enabling environment, and most importantly, for making policy recommendations on how to promote these meaningful innovations for the poor. And that landscape study is the valuable fundamental source for the government to design an action plan to promote the IB under the national program for the sustainable development of the private sector in Vietnam. NPI, my ministry now, is going to submit this program for the Prime Minister approve this November. It means that 2 years to go. I do hope that when the program approved and implemented, it could create a stronger development of IB in Vietnam. And we are also now cooperating with the Business Association to nominate the IB awardees for the ASEAN Inclusive Business Award 2020. You know that the IB companies are typically very innovative because they need to reduce the risk of the business working in the market for the poor and risk of the poor in engaging with such companies. Innovation in IB is mostly related to the business costs and how to integrate the poor, vulnerable group in the company value chain. Through the inclusive business, the women economic empowerment also enhanced. Therefore, the IB market remarkably contribute not only to the poverty reduction, hunger eradication, but also gender gap narrowing. Do you know that today the industry Revolution 4.0 and the climate change challenges, especially the recent COVID-19 pandemic, is changing dramatically the way industrial work. Inclusive innovation have become much more important than ever. Recently, under the project Catalyzing Women Entrepreneurship, creating a gender responsive entrepreneur ecosystem with the support of ISCAP, we have conducted a research on assessment of the impact of COVID-19 on the SME, especially women-led SMEs in Vietnam. Let me share with you some key points we gained from that research. Okay, sorry. Yes. The full report you can find in the summit website. An online questionnaire was developed to collect primary information about the impact of COVID-19 on SME in Vietnam. Brazil's 220 business participated in the online survey was conducted in very limited time, only 1 month. COVID-19 has caused 3 broad difficulties for Vietnamese enterprises, including the business activities have decreased along the aggregate demand, the shortage of capital, the working capital for production and business, and the firms has facing the labor shortage due in part to the need to furlough the non-essential staff to reduce the cost. However, the impact of COVID-19 on businesses have been wide-ranging, depending on the wide range of factors, such as, but not limited to, the business sector in which they are operate, the financial strength of the firm, and the third is a degree of the reliance on the steady cash flow, and the fourth is the cost structure, etc. And this research also proposed very strategic policy recommendation for our country. First, the recommendation for the near term, and second for the new normal post-COVID-19 business ecosystem. And third is a policy recommendation for the long-term business enabling environment reform agenda. For the preparing, because now you know that Vietnam's are very successful in fighting with the COVID-19, and we are now already back to the normal, the new normal post-COVID. So we pay much attention on how to support the SME to prepare for the new normal post-COVID-19. So it means that in this research, we are really focusing on how to advance the level of innovation amongst the SME and the digital economy in Vietnam. It is the critical element for preparing to the new normal post-COVID. The women entrepreneurs in particular may perceive this to be a daunting prospect, as it is often perceived to be outside their areas of core competition for various social cultural reasons. But with access to the right training and other inputs, MSME, including the women-led SMEs, could leverage the ICT to great competitive effects, such as reducing various transaction and fixed costs and unlocking significant efficiency gains. In this context, it would be value in developing an user-friendly analytical tool that could allow the MSME to conduct a systematic self-diagnosis of their relative strengths and weaknesses, notably in terms of their preparedness for the post-COVID-19 business ecosystem. So therefore, one of our policy priority on supporting the SME is to further advance the level of innovation among the SME, including the government SME, preparing for the new normal post-COVID-19 business ecosystem. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would love to discuss with you later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Huong. And a personal thank you for your leadership on this agenda, but both nationally and indeed regionally under Vietnam's presidency. Also, a big thank you for mentioning the Catalyzing Women's Entrepreneurship Program that ESCAP has. We've been delighted to work with you on that. And I think that gender dimension within IB is thank you for putting that at the forefront of certainly of this discussion. Let me now turn to Rizal. SME Corp Malaysia is leading the promotion of IB in Malaysia. Can you share with us what will be some of your key areas of priority to support inclusive business in Malaysia? Rizal, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Good morning, everyone. Rizal here from SME Corp. Perhaps I would also like to share something that we have done yesterday before going to the key areas to support inclusive business in Malaysia. Actually, yesterday we have signed MOA with Axiata Digital, which actually says about looking into how we actually helping the underserved businesses to embrace technology and the country to move towards the digital economy. And this is one of the things that perhaps can link to the inclusive business as well. And from there, I think we have done a lot as well. The initiative to bring inclusive business to Malaysia was first mooted in 2018, realizing the fact that inclusivity has always been a key principle in Malaysia National Socio-Economic Development Agenda, in which the government of Malaysia commissioned the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific, which is UNESCAP and IBAN, to conduct inclusive business landscape study in Malaysia in 2018. And ever since, the Malaysian government has progressively embarked on raising awareness on developing IB agenda in Malaysia in order to formulate better policy for inclusive growth and empower the bottom of pyramids 40%, which is B40 group, both economically and socially, to uplift their standard of living. Yeah. So that's what I mentioned earlier, that what we have done together with Axiata Digital is that to help the B40, the micro enterprises, in terms of access to financing, in which it can be linked to IB agenda, as well as to help the micro enterprises to expand their businesses. Yeah. So in order to support and boost the development of IB in Malaysia, we have 5 key areas that have been identified. The first one is actually making IB a strategic objective in SME development strategy. Yeah. And IB has been recognized as a prospect to contribute and complement policies and programs supporting SME growth. And Malaysia has a strong and advanced institutional framework for SME development with a dedicated SME strategy and conforms to the ASEAN Strategic Action Plan for SME Development 2016 to 2025 that can be expanded to include IB by mainstreaming IB support in its SME framework, as well as integrating inclusive business into the SME strategy. And to align to this agenda, IB has been incorporated as one of our strategies in the National Entrepreneurship Policy 2030, which actually translate into 2 of our 6 strategic thrusts, which we actually mentioned about improving access to finance and financial inclusion for entrepreneurs and enterprises, as well as promoting social entrepreneurship, which links to the IB agenda. Yeah? And IB also now be considered to be part of the strategic recommendations under the upcoming 5-year development strategy, which is the 12th Malaysian Plan, 2021 until 2025. And this plan will ensure a more inclusive and meaningful development of the nation in line with the formation of prosperous society. In addition, we also have this Shared Prosperity Vision 2030, launched last year in October, aspires to propel the nation towards high value-added economic activities in a more inclusive manner. So we make IB as a strategy objective in our SME development strategy. And secondly, we also have these to institutionalize IB champions and developing a dedicated program and implementing structure to promote and monitor IB in Malaysia. We have three major approach. Yeah. First, we will establish the IB coordinating unit, which will actually coordinate as well as oversee the implementation of SME programs for IB and monitoring, as well as reporting on the results of the new IB strategy. The second approach in institutionalizing these champions, we also have focal points. Yeah. And as the focal points, we will actually coordinate the IB promotion, raise awareness, monitor the results, as well as contribute to a national IB report, helping steering the IB initiative at the national level. And last but not least, in this approach, we also set up IB steering board as, to provide strategy advice, endorse the annual action plan, as well as promoting the IB and certifying IB accreditation. Yeah. So the third area that we would like to focus in terms of promoting and boosting IB is that the IB awareness itself, yeah, and links to the social enterprise agenda. As IB is not much known in Malaysia, and promoting IB requires further knowledge and sharing and advocacy. Business associations are best suited to generate awareness among the firms. Yeah, and government agencies would also need to be roped in to prepare, disseminate the knowledge of IB, as well as putting the information and materials in the IB websites, having workshops and seminars and capacity building programs. And the fourth areas that we would like to look into is about accreditation for IB. Yeah, an IB accreditation system is needed as basis for targeting IB support. And this is very crucial and essential to create a transparent and accepted system that can clearly distinguish IB and non-IB. So IB accreditation companies would have access to financing, business coaching, and other IB support programs. The principles of IB accreditation are based on composite rating tool that assess business performance, social impact, and innovation. So end of the day, we will rate and certify the IB so-called companies so that we know where they are. And this rating is based on the IB line and not the whole company. It will be done twice a year by a team of representatives from the government and business associations based on in-depth company interviews done by an independent expert. And companies that are rated as potential IBs or IBs will receive business coaching to make their business line more IB ready. Yeah. Last but not least, the focus areas that we will look into: business coaching for potential and existing IB. Yeah. This is very important as well because IB business coaching would be fundamentally different from existing government capacity development programs, which are often for smaller firms or social enterprises, focus on general business development for new firms, do not provide in-depth training on proper social impact assessment, and also not provide advices on business re-engineering to achieve large-scale social impact through high commercial returns. Yeah? So we have our business counselors as well as strategic partners, perhaps, to actually help us in doing this business coaching for the potential and existing IBs. And the new IB business coaching outside the existing program, the government agencies that will be established with a company-specific guidance rather than general training or seminars. And SME Corp Malaysia, representing our ministry, the Ministry of Development of Entrepreneur and Cooperatives, as well as the Government of Malaysia, is highly committed to promote IB Malaysia. And we have the aspiration to initiate the suggested recommendation for IB promotion under the strategy for enabling environment in IB Malaysia. This is based on the study that has been done by UNESCO as well as IBAN. I think for now, that's from Malaysia.
Thank you very much, Rizal. And again, a very comprehensive response around what the government's doing there. And again, congratulations on your appointment as CEO as well. It's very welcome. And of course, we were very encouraged to hear about the development of the Ministry of Entrepreneurship in Malaysia as well. I think this bodes well for this agenda and shows a direction of travel for many of the governments who are thinking about innovation and engaging the private sector. Okay, we've kind of heard from 3 governments now, and again, in the spirit of partnerships, let's now hear from some businesses on this agenda. So in this regard, let me now turn to Pasita, who is the co-founder of EcoStore Sustainable Lifestyle. And you've long been promoting impact businesses in ASEAN. Can you tell us more about your business and how it does good in inverted commas? What type of public-private partnerships are critical to promote more impact businesses in ASEAN? So over to you for a business perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and I hope you can all hear me well. Well, I'm coming from the small business sector, and we have about 900,000 MSMEs in the Philippines. And for MSMEs, usually you don't think of CSR. You don't think of corporate social responsibility. You probably don't even think of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. But from our name, EcoStore, as you can see, the ECHO is capitalized. When we started 12 years ago, E was always for environment. So we were probably always thinking about climate action, albeit we were not naming it. And then C meant C was for communities, because we would source products from small communities around the country who had no market access. H, of course, is hope, is to give, the small producer the hope that they can be a sustainable business in the long run. And O is for organization, because we engage nonprofits, other NGOs, other organizations to help us in delivering goods and services from small communities to our consumers. And with COVID, as you know, we had to pivot, and we pivoted to the digital platform because, like any MSME affected, like they say 60% have closed, have shuttered. And what we had to do was close the stores in the malls, but pivoted to digital. And our MSME suppliers will continue to have that supply route towards consumers. So what we're saying is that as an SME, business does not have to be a huge corporation to be able to practice IB or inclusive business. Business can just have that heart, and that's why we call social enterprises such, because there's that social good aside from the profit. And now, of course, we highlight the environment for climate action and climate change. So in ASEAN, I think that if we're doing it in the Philippines, this is something very replicable in all the 10 ASEAN states because of our same geography. Our SMEs are counting on small businesses like ours to keep moving the agriculture, to keep moving products from farm to market. So in summary, I think small businesses like ours, like EcoStore, which is now found online, ecostore.ph, is that for all MSMEs out there all over ASEAN, you need not be big to be an inclusive business. So that's what we do. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for being so succinct. Big is not always beautiful. I think that's the key message that I've taken from there. Let me now turn to Perry from Manila Water. I must confess I'm a bit starstruck because a few years ago I undertook some personal research on a broad topic of inclusive economies. So I did a big study on Manila Water. So it's great that you can make it today. Of course, many of you know Water Manila is a private water services company serving the poorest neighborhoods in Metro Manila. Can you share with us what are some of the innovations that Manila Water have introduced to make sure that you were able to provide essential water services to some of the poorest neighborhoods while still being able to be commercially viable and make a profit? Over to you, Perry.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be part of this
prestigious summit. Allow me first to describe the business model of Manila Water, because I think it is best to describe it so that you will understand the transformation that we have undertaken the past 20 years. We are celebrating our 23rd year today. So we are a full service private water listed company. When you say full service, we are in source development, distribution, and wastewater treatment. Our businesses span a lot of urban areas. The biggest, obviously, is the eastern zone of Metro Manila, as well as 18 more urban areas in the Philippines, as well as we are also quite a significant player in Ho Chi Minh City, as well as the eastern corridor of Thailand. We were born out of the privatization program of the government 20 years ago, when at that time, service level in Metro Manila was considered one of the poorest, actually. So our transformative programs, which we initiated, has three elements or pillars. The first is, it is important to prepare the organization to respond to the challenges of delivering essential service. So part of the privatization program was to absorb about 2,100 former government employees. So the first part of the transformation is the mindset orientation of the employees that we inherited from government. And that was an exciting exercise because I was there in 1997. The strategy was decentralization and empowerment to ensure accountability for results and upskilling of our employees and ensuring that these are sustained. The second pillar is operating efficiency. Just imagine, and before we took over, nearly 65% of water in the distribution system got lost through pilferage and leaks. We have now brought that down to 10-12%. It is one of the best improvement in operating efficiency. And the third is in sustainability. I think very early in our concession, we thought that if we don't serve the urban poor, then we cannot call our business sustainable, because at that time, if you're not, a lot of people are not connected to the distribution system, and we exerted effort through our Too Big Para sa Barangay, that's our urban poor program, where we successfully interconnected about 2 million poor people. The challenge right now under the COVID situation is the government has reported over 1.5 million people has just joined the ranks of the low income again. And that means we have to reinvent our urban poor program so that we continue to deliver essential service to our customers, especially the low income households. At this stage, I'll stop and look forward to interacting during the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Perry. Let me now turn to Gil. The ASEAN Business Advisory Council has been supporting inclusive businesses. Can you tell us why you think it is important that governments build enabling environments for inclusive businesses? And secondly, how the ASEAN Business Advisory Council has been supporting the promotion of inclusive businesses over the past few years. Over to you, Gil.
Thank you. Good morning. So why is it important to have an enabling policy environment? That's the first question. Well, as you know, it's business that drives the economy. It's business that takes the risk in these ventures. And in so doing, they create jobs, create wealth, and hopefully everyone's led to prosperity. But the main question is this business conducted in an inclusive manner? Is there fairness, good governance? Is it sustainable? Or are the rich just getting much richer, which is not bad in itself? but the issue is the divide getting wider, which is not sustainable. Well, that's where government comes in to address the gaps, to level the economic playing field, create opportunities. In fact, I have to tell you that oftentimes it's government who creates barriers which does not facilitate business and trade. They create barriers for purposes of protecting industries and businesses, but in the wrong way, because it does not help business to grow and mature and be competitive. So yes, we do need government that does not create barriers and works closely with private sector. That's why ASEAN Back and the Joint Business Councils early on during the pandemic has come up with 225 concrete actionable recommendations to help address COVID-19 with both health and economic measures to do now urgently on short-term basis that leads to containment of the pandemic and as we reopen our economies toward sustainability. But we need fast decision making and execution at this very trying times. Otherwise, we're just piling up many recommendations to government which never see daylight. So as mentioned earlier, we have to get out of our comfort zone during this time. And I'm pleased to say that inclusive business is very much part of our agenda. And through our report, which is called Pathway 225 or Pathway Towards ASEAN Recovery and Hope, we have shifted from our focus from being policy or broad-based policy focused to more action-based. And I'm happy to announce that ASEAN Back fully supported the launching of the ASEAN Responsible and Inclusive Business Alliance, which was spearheaded by our partner ASEAN CSR Network. It puts together these businesses who have the passion for moving inclusive business in different areas where they are most interested in. As you know, in pushing for any reforms, you need 4 elements. Number 1, a champion. In this regard, we have ASEAN CSR Network. Number 2, you need a platform to scale up. And we have ARIBA, the ASEAN Responsible and Inclusive Business Alliance, wherein people can exchange ideas, best practice, resources, and so on. And of course, an agenda, which has now become very clear and very important. And last of all is government support. And that's why we're happy to be working very closely with the ACSME in the second time of the IB Awards, Inclusive Business Awards, which will be undertaken in November during our ASEAN Business and Investment Summit. So if you want to put action in IB, sustainability, ESG, migrant workers, decent work, they're all under the umbrella of sustainability. You can join ARIBA, you can join us so that we can help promote it together, make it more exciting, and provide us and make us your support group. With that, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gil. That brings to the end of kind of the first round of questions. An apology for my appalling timekeeping. We're running a little bit short of time, but let me address. There's a couple of questions that have come through the chat that I think I want to point towards His Excellency Sokong Huang and Rizal. But actually, before I do that, I just want to actually pose a question to Pasita, Perry, and Gil, just to give you some time to think about this. In the spirit of the theme of this summit is around partnerships, and what Christian said around the need for disruptive partnerships. For Pasita, Perry, and Gil, I'd actually like to know from you, who are you not partnering with or collaborating with now that you feel you would need to grow inclusive business, even though you may not want to collaborate with them? So I'm just going to leave that question with you. I'll come back to you. But firstly, let me pose a question to His Excellency Heng Sokong first. Around a question is coming around how government are emphasizing inclusive business, or indeed not within COVID stimulus packages. And maybe after that, Huang, I'd actually like to get your views on that as well, given where Vietnam is now on looking at kind of, if you like, the new normal and post-recovery. So maybe I go to His Excellency first.
Thank you, Jonathan. Of course, Cambodian government has already issued its fifth stimulus package as the country continues to combat this economic impact caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. This latter round is quite important measures on how we support the previous stimulus package and supporting the country's most important sectors such as industry, on garment, wear, textile manufacturing, SME and tourism that make some of the sectors, especially for our SME, that right now we make it to go digital. And of course, within the government policy, we propose some other action plans such as the Digital Cambodia that we're going to be launched by 2023. And of this, we do have some action plans on the SME development policies 2021 to 2025. And out of this, we do have drafted our SME law, and also the packagings on the SME cluster zone that is quite important as well. By doing so, the committed agency is joint hand together between the public-private partnership is going to be gone through for these action plans. In Cambodian, we do have our Ministry of the Industries and Technologies and Innovation, and that play a crucial role. But out of this, we need other agencies such as the other line industry and private sectors, and of course the SME itself, the IB model and IB company that have to join hands together, and also with the development partners to make our IB to be success in Cambodia. Yeah, thank you so much.
Great, thank you very, very much. Maybe Huang very briefly as well, again, and the question around how IB has been embraced in government stimulus packages. And apologies for throwing these left field questions at you. I know this wasn't in the brief, I tend to do this. so over to you, Huang.
Yeah, it's okay, Jonathan. My pleasure to share with everyone. As you know that from the beginning, when the COVID-19 started at the beginning of this year, the Vietnamese government already prepared very well to fighting with this pandemic. And from the first quarter of this year, the government already issued a package to support the MSME to fight with the COVID-19. And in the policy support package, we also strongly focus on how to protect the labor, the employees, and especially for the vulnerable group. We have several measures such as reduce tax to expand the duration for the tax of the enterprises, and also provide the financial support for the low-income people to help them to overcome the challenges. And now we also always try to monitor and to evaluate how the people and also the enterprises, how they access to the policy support, because the policy issued, but in fact not everyone can access successfully with the support method from the government, especially the procedures very complicated. So we are now trying to make to simplify the procedures, and also to make everything more transparent. And we apply the technology and also innovation in the how to deliver the government support. And especially for the enterprises, the SME, MSME, as I share in my presentation before that, we focusing on to leverage the ICT, the innovation, as well as the digital transformation. And at PI, we are now designing a digital transformation program for the MSME, and we are focusing on the inclusive innovation. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Let me turn now to Rizal. There's a very specific question coming for you, Rizal, around the Malaysia Business Coaching Initiative, and the question is whether this is a government or an NGO-led project. So hopefully a quick answer, but over to you, Rizal.
Okay, all right. Well, Jonathan, currently SME Corp Malaysia has a team of business counselors, we are doing the business coaching activities ourselves. Yeah. Nevertheless, as demand surely increases and the need of more assistance in terms of the business advisory due to the COVID-19 pandemic, yeah, we will be able perhaps to open to consider for private sectors or private entities to be our strategic partners to become business coaches. So we have done that, like our current SME programs in terms of the certifications and assessments that we have external parties as our strategic partners in doing so. So this is for the MSMEs programs. So perhaps in future, we will be considering private sectors or private entities to become our business coaches as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Rizal. I'm very mindful of the time. There's a few more questions coming, but let me abuse my moderator rights and go back to Pasita, Perry, and Gil on the question I raised earlier in the spirit of kind of partnerships, which is essentially, what partnerships do you think are going to be most important from your perspective to grow the concept of IBs, for want of a better word, and really taking into account what Christian said earlier on the need for disruptive partnerships? Who do you think you do need to partner with to expand your inclusive businesses and grow? Maybe I'll go to Pasita first.
Thank you.
My apologies, but very briefly.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'll make it brief.
Thank you, Pasita.
You know, the pandemic got me thinking that maybe where organizations have what you call negative lists, like you don't want to talk to fossil fuel companies. You don't want to talk to people who destroy the environment. But you know what? How do you change them if you don't collaborate? So I think now is the time to embrace everyone who used to be like on the other side. And in the true spirit of inclusion, like people who don't like diversity must now embrace diversity. People who keep destroying the environment, you must put them on the table and embrace them so that you can hopefully change them in your own small way. So for me, disruption is really changing the rules. Thank you.
That's a great point, Pasita. Thank you very much. Perry, maybe over to you.
I think it's very important for Manila Water post-COVID, and as we speak right now, we have to engage with the other key stakeholders so that we can implement our projects efficiently. The key stakeholders, I can identify them to include local government units. Okay. Second would be community-based organizations, because they really helped us implement our Tubig para sa Barangay or our projects for the urban poor. I think I mentioned again where we are worried by the recent assessment of the government that 1.5 million Filipinos, most of them in Metro Manila, are now part of the low income or below the poverty line. At the end of the day, these people must be provided sustainable water supply. If we don't do that, obviously they need to survive, and it's not good for the community and for the water utility, because pilferage will continue to go up. They will puncture the pipes, and they will do anything under the sun to survive. So I think we will need to reinvent our programs and projects so that we will reach these new members of the low-income community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Perry. Gil, last but not least, final word to you.
Yes, thank you. Well, as you know, partnerships is like a puzzle. So who are already in the puzzle? Well, governments, we have AXME, as you know, but they provide a regional platform on policies, which is very good. But do we have national level platforms wherein private sector and government are there? I don't think so. So that's one missing piece. Do you have a champion? Yes, we have a champion. As I mentioned earlier, we have ASEAN CSR Network and ARIBA, which provides, by the way, the ASEAN centrality. But we also have IBAN, and we would love to work with IBAN because they provide the guidelines, which is fantastic. Now, a big missing link, I think, are the big boys, the big corporates. They are really your big brothers. So, you know, many times they do IB already and are very good at it, but they're doing it many times in silos. So you can just imagine if we can have that platform where there can be sharing of best practices and we could synergize and so on. The opportunities would be fantastic. I'll give you one example. You talk to any corporates and they will tell you, we love inclusive business. We love to embrace the MSMEs. But the basic question is, are they ready? Are they, you know, do they have the capacity in terms of their production skills, their efficiencies, their financial responsibilities, and so on? So they need to be prepared. They need to be mentored. That's why ASEAN BAC has an ASEAN Mentorship for Entrepreneurs Network, which will tie up again with ARIBA in preparing many of the MSMEs, those sectors in the bottom of the pyramid, for them to become productive and eligible to participate in the global supply chain. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Gil. All good points. I'm afraid I'm going to have to wrap up now. I'm 1 minute over, but thank you so much to all the panelists for those insights, both from business and government. And again, in the spirit of partnerships, what struck me was we all appreciate governments, companies, academia, and NGOs that are part of this ecosystem. But I think that the panelists really pulled out some more nuance around this. Around several people mentioned digital and technology, and I think certainly having these. Who would we want in the room for the fourth IB summit? I think probably more technology. I think Huang mentioned kind of women and the importance of women-led enterprises. We've heard about the importance of small enterprises as well as the big bad boys in inverted commas and getting the big corporates in the room. I think a really important point around community-based organizations and the role they play and getting them more engaged in this process. And of course, as Gil very eloquently putting at the end, helping bring these people who are outside of the puzzle, shall we say, into the IB ecosystem. So a huge thanks again to all the panel, and I'll give you kind of a virtual round of applause, and hopefully you can hear that resonating all around your countries. At this point, let me hand over back to Irene for some announcements. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. What a wonderful conversation it has been, everyone. We are now at the break between 10:45 or currently 10:48 a.m. until 11 a.m. Bangkok time. Now we are going to switch over to a new Zoom meeting link. So for everybody, for all the participants here, please go ahead and open up your participant guide that you have received from our team. The link to move over to Zoom meeting room 2 is in your participant guide. I encourage you to make sure that this participant guide is open the entire time that you are participating in the summit. This way you can access the link for meeting room 2 easily. In case you do not have the participant guide open right now, the link for you to join us at 11 a.m. Bangkok time, so approximately in 10 minutes, is also pasted in the chat. You can see right now a message from Doreen Nguyen, the link for room 2. So please go ahead and prepare to join us at 11 a.m. Bangkok time in the new Zoom link that you can find in either your participant guide under Zoom meeting room 2 for session 1, the title of Building Inclusive Business Models at 11 a.m. Bangkok time. If not, you can, if you don't have your participant guide in front of you, you can also find the link in the chat right now from Doreen Yuan. Please feel free to copy the link in the chat so that you have access to it. The room that you're currently in now will remain open for the next 10 minutes. And should you have any troubles joining us at the 11 a.m. session, please feel free to message Doreen Yuan for support. Thank you all. Have a great break and see you all in 10 minutes. We will be getting started in just a few minutes. It is now 11 a.m. in Bangkok, and you're welcome to use the chat to send in your comments and questions, but please note that it will not be possible for you to unmute your microphone. So please do participate in the chat. We will now move to session 1, Building Inclusive Business Models. And the session will be introduced and moderated by Ms. Sharifa Najwa Syed Abu Bakar, Chief Knowledge Management and Strategy Officer, SME Corps, Malaysia. I would now like to invite Ms. Syed Abu Bakar to open the discussion. Over to you.
Thank you, Irene. In this session, good morning, everyone. In this session, we will hear firsthand the different examples of inclusive business models. We will also identify how micro and small businesses may participate in the value chain of IB. And I think it's very important, especially in the phase of COVID-19 outbreak, etc., where government resources are very much exhausted in supporting the businesses already. Therefore, from my experience of working with UNSCAP and at the ASEAN level, which I really appreciate, it's obvious that the IB concept, the IB business model can actually ease the burden from the government and actually leverage on the more active participation by the private sector to take the lead to promote IB business. So I really look forward to the contribution and experience of the panel in this session to share their business models. So let us start by, I think in this session there'll be 5 very experienced panelists. Mr. Lin Tet Zen from On Doctor, Myanmar. Ms. Melanie Moleno, IB expert from the Philippines. Mr. William Puyo, General Manager of Khmer Water Supply Cambodia. Dr. Mahendra Shah, Founder and Director of Zen Resort Bali, Indonesia. And Mr. Louis Chuacha, Founder and President Director of Louis Organic, Indonesia. So quite diversified sectors there. Before I pose questions to our panelists, I would like to once again remind all of you in the audience to actually describe the IB business model that you yourself are using in the chat box, as we go through the panel sessions. Okay, now to start, I think I'll start with Dr. Tet Zan Lin, On Doctor. On Doctor actually proposes a very imaginative way of providing health services to more people in Myanmar. Can you tell us about your IB model, inclusive business model, and how it makes economic sense and social sense, actually? What collaborations that you put in place to make your business resilient, particularly in the face of COVID-19? Please, Doctor.
So thank you very much. Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Okay, so let me share my screen. So just a few slides, and as I will explain what we are doing. I think you can see my screen, right? So
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So actually, I'm the medic doctor, but I've studied medicine, but I changed my career to business, and I started my second startup as On Doctor in 2016. So let me share how we innovate to be the commercially viable model and benefits to how we can make benefits to the lower income model. So as what is I like to explain what is On Doctor first. Actually, On Doctor is connecting the patients to the doctors. Just a simple idea. So, but we are creating values for not only for the patients but also for the doctors. For example, in Myanmar, so any doctors who graduate from the University of Medicines and have the doctors' registrations, they can participate in On Doctor platform That means like including the women, so including the housewives, so who cannot go outside or cannot go to the clinics for the job. So, but they are the medical doctors, so they can participate in the On Doctor platform, and then so they can answer the questions from the patients. So, in the other hand, so we are providing the healthcare to the patients, especially for everyone, especially for the farmers and people who are living in the rural areas and people with a lower income. So so people who have limited access to the healthcare providers. So so our goal is like to achieve the universal health coverage. That means like a basic essential primary healthcare must be accessible to everyone without financial hardship. Actually, so that is not easy. But not easy without technology. So I invented like a telehealth platform, and then so doctors and patients can meet on the platform. So yeah, and then so how we add the features. So actually, so patients, I'm telling about like patients can access to the healthcare without financial hardship. That means patient can access to the healthcare with $3 US dollar per month. It is only $3 US per month. So they can ask unlimited questions to the doctors, and then so they can ask not only for them, but also for their families, their friends, and their community. So they can just subscribe with $3 US per month, and so they can access to the doctors for the unlimited questions. So that's why so a lot of people, a lot of patients are subscribing on every day. So about 500 patients are subscribing on every day, so new patients in every day. So that is making money, and that leads to the commercially viable model. And then we are also delivering and we are also producing the medical contents, the healthcare contents. That these contents are written by the real medical doctors. So that means like we are not translating from any other resources. We are just writing and creating the articles which is happening in the Myanmar's health sector. So that's why so that articles are really engaging. A lot of people are viewing the page, viewing the articles and reading the articles and share on the social media. So now we have over 1.5 million followers on the social media within 4 years. These are the organic followers. And then so for the premium patients, so for example, like if the patients who want to meet with a specialist from the different categories, so they can also choose the specialists from different categories, and they can ask directly to the patients, directly to the doctors. So that is very good for the like the premium services patients. And then so because of the good work, we have achieved about 5 ASEAN Gold Awards and 1 Asia or Merit winner. So including like the ASEAN Business Awards in 2019, ASEAN ICT Awards in 2018, and ASEAN Smart App Awards in 2020 in this year. So that makes like we are the only one award-winning telehealth company in Myanmar. So for your second question, so how we collaborate with any other associations or organizations for the COVID-19. So during the COVID-19, so every people are caring about the COVID-19 patients. So that is in the other hand, so we have to care to the non-COVID patients too. So they for example, like every place is locked down and stay at home, and they cannot go and access to the healthcare providers and clinics and hospitals. So that's why so we are using our platform, and we are connecting the patients with the doctors from different areas. For example, like we are collaborating with Yangon Children's Hospital, so with the neurology and nephrology department, and then so they are carrying the people who are living in other cities, using our platform. That means like a teleneurology. So we are carrying the patients in other cities of the country. And then so we partner with some of the private hospitals in Myanmar. And then so we are using the same model as a public caring model. And then so in health industry, one of the key points is who is the payers. So without the payers, it cannot be sustainable. So in Myanmar, so insurance business is not much so popular yet. So it is just growing model, growing in stage. That's why so we are partnering with the employers who want to give the healthcare access to their employees, and then so families of employees. So that's why so we are partnering with the employers and to carrying the people who need access to the healthcare. And then so we are during the COVID-19, we also partner with the Ministry of Health and
actually show here. Yeah, here. Aims to help address the above-mentioned concerns with the following through a cloud-based online one-stop shop where anyone can find dentists, interact with them, get their pre-COVID assessment, and book appointments. Dentists can also avail of legal and accounting services tailored to their practice. HealthGround will work with registered trainers and mentors to provide dentists the needed continuing education being required by the government in the renewal of their licenses. With the right resources, HealthGround even aims to educate new dentists and dental assistants and later help them get started with their practice. Products like Dental Health Card that will make dental services affordable and accessible to the untapped market of at least 70 million Filipinos who have never been to the dentist will be developed. Now, what can make a model like this succeed? I think that a robust and integrated set of policies, support services, and investments, both from the private and public sector, will make this challenging journey doable. What challenges do we foresee or have already faced? For one, there is really a need for the government to improve the ease of doing business. You see, sometimes a very small process, simple process of getting a business registered takes months. Ease of doing business was also raised in an FGD that we conducted in Myanmar last week. I would suspect this may also be a clamor in other countries in the region. Then, of course, there is the challenge of getting investments to accelerate the whole thing. With us only using our meager resources, I am confident that we can grow the business, but our growth will not be as fast as we would want to. With investors on board, we can accelerate the process a whole lot faster. So I am posing this challenge right now to impact investors and development partners in the room. No? If this project that can potentially reach millions of Filipinos is a project that you think is worth supporting, we would love to hear from you. I am hoping that this will be one of the success stories that we will hear in the next years, having been supported by the partners present here today. So right now, we are fortunate that we have many business accelerators and incubators and impact investment funds and last mile distribution and marketing systems that we can tap in developing and growing more inclusive business model. But how can we find them? A lot more needs to be done. We need that kind of information on where investors are, what are they funding? Investors would need to know where the investee organizations are and what projects are investable. And ideally, we need all of this information in one place and make it accessible to all. So to respond to your question earlier, what is needed to make a partnership? What is needed is a partnership strategy that can maximize access to the resources available from the potential partners. We need to have a full portfolio of resources at the disposal of enterprises like HealthGround Philippines so that they too can be successful. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have excellent panel today who keep to their time. That makes my life slightly easier. Okay, I think next we'll move on to Mr. William Puyo. William, you lead Khmer water supply in Cambodia. Can you tell us about the IB model and what made it successful?
Sure. Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is William Puyo. I'm the general manager of Khmer Water Supply Holding, which is a company which has been operating in the Cambodian piped water sector since 2013. So thanks very much for the opportunity for me to present a little bit about what we do. But I know we have limited intervention time, so I'll get right into it. So before delving into the details of our business model, I'd like to briefly introduce about the problem specifically which we're looking to address. Because you see, in the last 15 years or so, the pace of increasing access to clean water, piped water in rural Cambodia has been vastly insufficient. It's taken over 15 years to increase from less than 1% to about 11% today. And access in Cambodia is pretty poor compared to its regional neighbors. It's half of the rate of Vietnam and about a fifth the rate seen in Thailand. And the situation is even more pressing because in Cambodia, surface water is particularly at risk of contamination from agricultural runoff. And furthermore, many household wells, particularly along the Mekong River, are at risk of contamination by arsenic or have high iron content. And finally, many wells become depleted during the dry season here, which forces families to resort to either unsafe or expensive backup solutions. And such occurrences are becoming more and more frequent here due to growing climate change. So as a result, there's an unacceptable number of households in Cambodia which are exposed to a multitude of threats from waterborne diseases which profoundly impact their health. Now, outside of key urban areas, the Cambodian government issues water licenses, which grant private water operators the exclusive jurisdiction for supplying piped water within specific geographic areas. And this system has resulted in the emergence of over 400 private water operators who supply piped water in rural and semi-rural areas, although today less than half of them are actually licensed officially. So today there are still millions of rural Cambodians who live in areas which should be commercially viable for these water operators, yet most are still excluded from the market today because they're simply not covered by any piped water infrastructure. You see, infrastructure rates remain unacceptably low due to the informal manner in which many water operators run their businesses. In particular, they face three key challenges which are driving their underperformance. First of all, they face great difficulty in accessing the capital that they need to build out the infrastructure across the entirety of the license area. Secondly, they typically have very weak management capacity in terms of marketing and accounting and governance, which leads to low connection rates within the limited households that are actually covered by the piped network. And finally, they lack the technical expertise that's needed for utility management, which leads to poor water quality and inefficiencies that increase production and operating costs, since most of the operators started that business without any prior experience specifically in that sector. So it's in the context of this market failure that KWASH was established in 2013 to expand access to clean and affordable water in rural Cambodia. So to this end, we created what we feel is an innovative business model that functions on two different levels. At the top, we have an operations-focused holding company under which there is a portfolio of individually registered and licensed water stations in which the holding company has a majority ownership. So the holding company at the top concentrates the bulk of the management teams, as well as costly activities such as fundraising, new utility acquisitions, engineering and design, purchasing, and overall oversight of the underlying utility portfolio to facilitate economies of scale. Now, all the subsidiary stations are individually registered companies operating with their own water licenses, and each has their own local team with at least one water treatment plant which draws from a surface or groundwater source for centralized treatment and subsequent pumping and distribution via a pipe network directly to metered households, who can then pay for their monthly consumption either at the station office or via a multitude of different available payment agencies. So the main benefit really of this structure is that the stations in the portfolio get to benefit from support provided by the holding company, in particular in terms of the best practices that we inculcate into them in terms of operational management, sales and marketing, accounting and corporate governance, as well as our expertise in engineering and technical aspects of running a utility company. And finally, in our ability to attract funding needed for the sector. So furthermore, concentrating the specialized manager of the holding company in Phnom Penh is significantly more cost effective than having a single operator hiring one-off consultants to provide similar inputs. So it allows us to systematically define best practices, which we uniformly disseminate across our station portfolio in order to maximize the social impact achieved and the value created. So just a few words on our growth, having explained our model. Since we started in 2013, we acquired our first two stations in 2014 and 16, which served as proofs of concept to show that we are able to scale the business. And as of today, we've managed to grow the station to cover a portfolio of 5 stations, covering a total of 40,000 households in the combined license area, out of which 13,000 are actually connected to the system today. So our growth plan is to continue adding at least 10 to 20,000 households to our consolidated license areas every year, though the challenge moving forward will be to ensure that we have sufficient funding available to achieve this growth. So just to conclude, I'd like to share a few words about what exactly makes us an inclusive business model. Well, very specifically, due to our dual social and commercial objective, our impact indicators are generally the same as our commercial indicators, specifically with respect to number of connected households, which increases the impact of clean water, as well as our revenue line, as well as how much we actually supply to those total households and how much they consume on average. So a large part of our success is derived from the platform which we've created for the holding company. Indeed, KWASH represents an opportunity for investors seeking to combine social impact with commercial returns through a single point of entry in order to ensure maximum impact on water access through a reliable partner. So while it's very valuable to continue expanding the capacity of the existing small operators who run their businesses more efficiently, we feel that when there's a group like us that's seeking to consolidate and professionalize the market, we strongly feel that investor and government efforts would benefit most from close cooperation with a single counterparty such as ourselves. That's everything from me. Thank you.
Excellent, impressive. 40,000 households today. That's impressive.
Just to clarify, that's in our license areas. So that's just 13,000 connected to them. So we're still expanding the infrastructure within our portfolio to connect more.
Right, okay. Now, moving on to Dr. Mahendra. Actually, I was hoping that he can take us on a virtual tour, but of his Zen resort, but due to limited time, Dr. Mahendra, we will have to settle with you describing your facilities to us, your resort to us, and the IB model that you use to actually integrate the local community into the IB model that you're using. Please, Dr. Mahendra.
Thank you, Sharia. Let me first, in a few words, take you on a virtual tour. COVID-19, post-COVID-19 opens up. We need to recognize that the tourism is the biggest sector in the economy. Tourism has the potential to bring the people of the world together. At the same time, we're talking about air travel and carbon emissions. Half the flights of this world are cross-Atlantic. The world needs this tourism to improve human relationship. And also in terms of sustainability. Now, when we talk of IB model, the definition of IB model is basically government-oriented to say we should help the people at the bottom of the pyramid, which is very true, because that's part of the development process. But from a private sector point of view, we also need to look at the demand side. We need to create tourism, which one contributes to the government aid, two, it delivers what the public demand, nationally and internationally. So it's very important that two sides of the equations are taken into account. Inclusive business is commercially viable. I think more than being commercially viable, tourism improves all aspects of development, physical, environmental, economic, sustainability, all this issue. So let me share our experiences on how we approach developing an IB model for tourism. Well, when you look at the biggest demand in the world is for wellness, cultural tourism, nature tourism, culinary tourism, and adventure tourism, which accounts for 80% of the global tourism market of over $3 trillion. Shopping is not there. Discos and bars are not there in this list of 5 things. So it's very important that this is the future of tourism. People living modern lifestyles need to go for de-stressing, to find their health, to adopt more sustainable lifestyles and so on. So this was the focus of how we developed Zen Resort 14 years ago. The first question for us was, well, when you talk of wellness, does Bali, does Indonesia, and in fact, you find that all Asian countries have traditional holistic medicine. India and China lead, but all these countries, and there's a lot of ground-mass knowledge. So this was the best area to focus on. And that's what we developed. We matched what we can do best here in Bali, in Indonesia, and in Asian countries against the demand. Secondly, where do you locate such a business? Well, one might immediately say, well, locate it near the airport. Let's go to Semenak. Let's go to Ubud, which are the concentrated places. But in reality, it is better to locate in a rural, remote area where the need for development is highest, where the air is clean, where the water is clean, and you have the greatest potential to do that. Now, when I started the resort 14 years ago, we were told that don't do it. You need to be where the hub of tourism is. Well, our experience has been totally contrary. We have 65 staff. Not a single staff has more than high school education. And yet, according to these 10-year reports, These are the best wellness hospitality staff in the world. You have to only go to TripAdvisor and read it. So they learned by doing. But what is important is what is in Bali, Indonesia, and in Asian countries, that people have compassion, they care, they have empathy, much more than the modern lifestyles where we have lost this. So this was the reason we set up in the rural area, in the north of Bali, and it's been amazing results in terms of that. Now Zen Resort is focused on Ayurveda, on Balinese, on Indonesian, on Thai, the best of Asian traditional knowledge. And our goal is to combine traditional knowledge with modern knowledge. And the most important thing we need to realize that there can be no sustainable development in this world. There cannot be sustainable development in this world until human beings themselves become sustainable. And that means we need to adopt sustainable lifestyles and responsible consumption. So while we depend on governments and business to tackle climate change, it's at the individual level. And one of the functions of the resort for the guests is to look at the sustainability transformation. In the local environment, we are working with local farmers. Advisory, we have just started a new project where we, for the first time in this area of Bali, we want to do rice and fish farming, which is an outcome of COVID, because people have lost their incomes. They cannot survive on rice alone, and we need to have the protein. That's an example. Secondly, what did we do this last 6-9 months of COVID? You know, what are the problems here? First of all, most resorts sent all the people home without salary. We have very little social support. In our case, I have staff that have been with me for more than 10 years. Not a single staff has resigned, and all of them can triple their salaries by going to the urban south. They stayed, and I could not let them go. So we decided to develop a forest and an organic farm. For 8 months, the staff have worked, and they have created the most beautiful organic farm for vegetables, fruits, and herbs. And we work with local farmers. We have quantified our information with them. And the most important is, in COVID-19, the missing link was immunity. So we developed here a Shirin Yoko, which the Japanese have been practicing for 200 years. Forest bathing, hugging the trees, breathing the air of the forest increases your immunity. So the staff have worked now for 8 months developing this wonderful 6-hectare facility, and we are ready to go to market. Also, the Zen Resort is a medium-sized enterprise, and it is really been one of the success stories because of the location, because of relying on the compassion and the caring and the attitude of the people. And this has been our success, and we are now ready to replicate this after 14 years of trials around the world, and especially in the Asian countries. We are very happy to share our knowledge in all the innovations. The most important reason why we have succeeded is we have developed globally unique innovations for wellness, well-being, and happiness and recreation. And that's the key to success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mahendra. One thing in common that I often see among the IB business owners is the passion, you know. When they speak, it's with passion. You believe in what you do, and that's among, you know, one of the driving force. Now, Mr. Louis Chuacha, this is another interesting case. Mr. Louis, you're the founder and president of Louis Organic Indonesia. Can you tell us about your business model and how it supports the local community?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for me being invited here by ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit, and also our Indonesian Ministry of Cooperative and SME. Is really happy that for me being able to share all our vision and mission and our what we are doing all this time since 2009. I used to work with Monsanto before, and I stopped working with them, and I try to find something else that really I think that we can do something that can benefit to other people. And now I'm as a founder of Lewis Organics in Indonesia. We start exporting all Indonesian farmers' agriculture products since 2011. And yeah, as you know that Indonesia is agriculture is a prime industry in Indonesia. That's why we really want to focus in that sector, and I want to prove and I want to make some awareness to everybody, to the government, and also all the our farmers to understand and to value more about agriculture products. So, and we also try to develop and transform the agriculture sectors into a new perspective. Our mission is try to consider Indonesia, Indonesia is considered being very huge potential for the crops, but unfortunately, most of the farmers now have unhealthy dependency with the big players. So we aim to create a good business model for agriculture industry, and we try to develop natural processing facilities in rural areas. So it's not only it's not always have to be in the central in Java, but we try to develop so many simple but considers quite advanced in terms of the food safety in the remote area. And we provide continuous farmers education and training, and we also try to establish a network, sustainable supply chain, and a relationship. So at the moment, we keep exploring, develop, produce, and deliver organic products for the worldwide market and as well as for domestic market. And we also develop partnership with farmers, cooperative, consumer, government, NGOs, with so many people in the network, in the agriculture networks, and we continuously build the capacity of our employee and stakeholders. And our company also being certified in many aspects, not only our company, but also our farmers, from the farming to processing, from the food safety to quality management, to ensure right quality of our product and services. Up until now, we are working with around 5,000 farmers being involved in the organic farming, processing, and also export for many products, agriculture products such as coconut sugar, which is now very big in demand because of having a very low glycemic index, which is good for people who are having diabetic and also for people who have autism and such thing like that. And also we are working very enthusiastic in the eastern part of Indonesia with around 300 farmers of peanut farmers near to the border of the Timor-Leste, and also in the very remote area of Rote Island. We're also developing a new product that we call lontar nectar. So there are so many potential for Indonesian agriculture product that we can produce a healthy sweetener. Nowadays, many people try to find healthy food. Many people like sweet, but how we can consume something sweet but still healthy? That we have to find a sweetener that having low glycemic index. Most of the palm sugar having a very low glycemic index, which is around only 30 to 35 glycemic index, percent of glycemic index, which is very, very, very healthy. But in Java also, we try to produce healthy snacks from the fruit, exotic fruits of Indonesia, such as jackfruit, which is now very famous worldwide. We try to produce healthy jackfruit chips, salaka chips, and dragon fruit chips, many kind of like that. So overall, we are working with around 5,000 farmers that covering around 1,000 hectares, and then we try to manage 10,000 tons of harvested crops per year in all over Indonesia.
Okay. Wow. I mean, it's good to know that you're not just inclusive in the sense of, providing market access and opportunities for the farmers, but you're also responsible towards your consumers, developing healthy options and things like that. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Now, I think Dr. Ted had a good break, waiting for the other presenters, listening to other presenters. So I think I'll go back to him to ask a question from the audience, from the participants. Dr. Ted, what is the issue? What are the issues you encounter in reaching the rural population, and how do the governments contribute towards implementation of your business model? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for questioning. And then to be honestly, in Myanmar, we don't have the telemedicine regulations in Myanmar. So actually, the government is preparing for that. So that's why. So we are waiting and looking for that policy. But in the other hand, from the public sector, so we are delivering and we are outreaching our accessibility of the apps to the rural areas just using social media. For example, like in Myanmar, so the number of Facebook users is much more than the number of internet users. That means some of the people are using more than one Facebook account. That's why the social media is really popular in Myanmar. So user acquisition cost in social media for the mobile app is just about 20 to 30 cents per downloads. It is really cheap in comparing with other countries. So that's why we are using social media, and then so we are also partnering with some of the associations, like for example, like a microfinance, and farmers app, for example, like a Tradu app. So that is a farmers agriculture tag. So we partner with them, and we are reaching to the rural areas with that associations. Not much from the government, but with our collaborations between the private sectors.
Right. Thanks. Dr. Mahendra, there's also a question for you from the participant on the wellness industry may have been more oriented towards the internet, tourists. Is COVID changing this more to local tourists? Are you getting more local tourists? And if that is the case, I mean, that's a bit more challenging, because previously you have people who are out of Asia, so they may appreciate the change that your resort provide for them. But for the locals, they may already be living in such surroundings. So how does it work for you during COVID?
Mr. Mahendra, yes, trying to ask you to unmute.
Can you unmute first? Right.
Right. Now, the domestic market actually is like international market, the same, because everybody needs wellness. People in Jakarta are equally stressed as much as London. We need to be able to focus on the domestic market as well. Unfortunately, some years ago when we looked at this, people preferred to go to Singapore for wellness, and Singapore is not the best place in the world because of the concrete structures. So for wellness, Bali or other areas, Yogyakarta, there are many other areas. So we need to do that. But currently we do not have any domestic tourists for the last 6 months because there was a strict lockdown. Only more recently, the connection to Java has been opened, and we are beginning to get bookings next week for some domestic tourism. But I think that's a market that deserves, and when we talk of international tourism, really the biggest market is within Asia itself, the ASEAN countries within the market. And the international, when you look at the United States or you look at Europe, one thinks people are not going to travel so far. But the fact remains, we have the weather, we have all the other attributes which lack in many countries for 6 months of the year. So the potential is there, and we have to go the SME way because that's the only way we can deliver. Large enterprises cannot deliver wellness. So we are working on our new marketing system that looks at within Asia, within Indonesia, and across the world.
Right. or maybe it's also good time for when you haven't got client, maybe it's time to get connected with Louis Chuacha to help, promote the agriculture produce. the
Absolutely right, because
networking is very important.
Last 6 months, my diet at every lunch and dinner is forest food.
Great.
Herbs, not things that I never tested in my life, and that's the only thing I'm eating, and I feel pretty good these 6 months.
No wonder you look glowing. Okay, if I can just, sorry.
We are developing healthy chips as well from vegetables. So in order to how to keep the life shelf of the vegetables, so we dehydrated like kale to make it kale chips, so everybody can still enjoy it, not only fresh but also as a healthy chips.
Right.
The first is come.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Right. Do we still have time? Time is up actually. Irene?
Yes, Ms. Sharifa.
Time is up, right?
Yes. Please go ahead and close your session, and we can continue with the next one. Not that I want to interrupt your conversation.
I know. I mean, I hope one day we will meet. We'll get the chance to meet face to face, probably at the Zen Resort. But you see, some of the things, as I mentioned earlier, to close the session, is that, you see, inclusive business, one element of it, very important element, is sustainability. And it is a sustainable business model, which may be slightly interrupted by COVID, but it is nevertheless, a sustainable business model. And the passion of the founders and the people running it, and in the case of Mahendra, and I'm sure Louis and the rest too, the commitment of the staff, when the motivation is the higher purpose, not just financial, I think that contributes a lot to the sustainability, not just the financial. With that, I think I'd like to thank all the panels and UNSCAP, IBAN and OECD, ASEAN, for inviting us and having us on this chat. And I hope there's a lot we can learn from the session, and I hope we'll engage again in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, panelists and moderators, for this valuable dialogue. We will now move to session 2, building inclusive business models in the agribusiness value chain. I would now, this session will be introduced and moderated by Mr. Graham Dixie, Executive Director of Grow Asia. I would now like to invite Mr. Dixie to open up the discussion. Over to you, Graham.
Right.
There we go.
Can you see me?
Yes, we do now.
Oh, good. Let me just get myself angled up. So welcome everyone to this session. I just wanted to just sort of set the scene a little bit. The point is that actually most of poverty, 2 to 4 times the level of poverty, happens in the rural space. And that one of the raw materials for changing that is ways that you can bring additional cash flow into the rural economy. And at the front and leading edge of that is agriculture and agribusiness. And so that we have on the call today 5 fascinating people. 2 of them are classic agribusinesses doing really interesting things in terms of their business. Another one is a company which is supplying inputs, which creates inclusive businesses for people to be able to do a value addition in the rural space. And then we have 2 people who will be representing the changing the way people think about inclusive business, and that's from the Asian Farmers Association and OECD. So we look forward to that. Now, what we will do is, I think what we let's start, and I wanted to start with Saran Song from Amarul Rice. Amarul Rice is one of the most interesting rice exporters operating out of Cambodia, being able to do sustainable rice, organic rice, exporting to 40 different nations, and building on Cambodia's excellent reputation as a quality rice producer. So, Saran, you're online?
Yes, I'm online.
Great. Saran, just start off by giving us so for the audience, just give a little thumbnail sketch of Amaral Rice. When did you start? How big are you? What do you do? And then we can go into more detail around the exact exclusive business model that you've developed.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Graham, for your participation. I would like to introduce Amaral Rice. Is a Cambodian company that established in 2011. That's a company of the rice milling and exporting from Cambodia. The company have a good connection where we try to link the market for the smaller farmer. We started the project in 2014. That's starting with 100 smallholder farmer in producing organic rice, supply under European standard and United States organic standard. The company has been quite reputation that have more farmers join us in 2020. We have 10,000 farmer family joining Amaral in two categories. One is organic rice, about 6,000 smaller farmer, and sustainable rice platform have 4,000 farmer in the supply chain. Amaral Rice have been invest and expand our capacity in the rural area, mostly in highland and poor in Cambodia. It's a poor provinces. And then we have been work very quite close under we call like public-private producer partnership. I would like to show you a little bit of our activity that we've been working with. That is
So Ron, just be careful on time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just try to a little bit show off that how we work with. So normally we just try to educate farmer, build capacity farmer, then they have capacity to work with us. Otherwise, they will be a very high gap in working with smaller farmer where they don't know where we go. So we try to build them the business concept. And that's I would say is Amaral CSR, because we believe this is our CSR, and now we become IB because we believe this business model become more sustainable and create more job, as well as bringing more supply chain to the world. And the last in 2020, we developed the blockchain partnership with Oxfam and or the Dutch company, and was funded by Dutch government to run the blockchain, where we connect farmer to the consumer directly with transparency and integrity, traceability. So we are happy to work on IB business model, and we believe this is very good business. We are growing more farmer joining in the IB our IB business model. Yeah. Thank you.
Joe, just go a little bit more detail. So your average grower who's growing organic rice, what's the benefit of him working with you as compared with selling into the normal distribution system? Does he get a high yield? Does he get better prices?
Yep, because we are looking 2013, we look on opportunity for the market, how build it up for the farmer. So we give up about 30 to 40% of the incentive price about the normal rice. Second, they receive capacity to improve quality and productivity, gaining another 20-30% gain. So in total, farmer gain about 50 to 60% about the normal conventional practices. So we believe this is not about only price gaining from the call like premium, but also in reducing the cost and improving productivity under the organic rice project.
That's fantastic. Sarah, we'll come back to you later, but there were many lessons coming out of that. You know, the movement from CSR to a business, the fact that you have that win-win situation that farmers are making more money from your process, and that you're moving into blockchain and traceability, which we know is increasingly important with urban consumers wanting to know what their product is, where it comes from, but also for you to know if someone contaminates your supply chain. Let's move to Simon. Simon Bakker. Simon has an extraordinary operation in the Philippines. You know, this is one of the few, mostly the production of cocoa is being in decline, except in the Philippines where Simon's working. And so let's hear a little bit about what Simon has done to set up an inclusive business model and bring in younger, better farmers with higher yields and be able to market that product globally. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our company. Now, I think what we see in the Philippines is that cocoa or cacao is a fairly small crop. We started very much as a kind of value adder through fermentation. The Philippines was not originally known as a high quality origin. And we came across quickly as we added value, we created a beautiful chocolate product, that there was a limitation on volume. And so for us, really, it has become a grower network where we integrated backward and helping farmers with financing and with technical support. For us, this meant eventually setting up our own finance company. So we operate a finance company under a different brand, Agronomica, and we have now 20,000 farmers in our network. And we export more or less 70%, 80% of all cocoa beans, and maybe about 60% of all cocoa volume in the Philippines. It really means that the pond is too big, too small. We are a big player in a small pond. And we work with the government and with other parties to really try to increase the size of the market. And I think our kind of, you know, what's the advantage of a farmer joining us is really the ability to adopt new technologies, to plant new crops, and to become productive in a new crop, integrated in his existing environment. And I think the other interesting thing for us to see is, as we are now financiers, right, long-term uncollateralized loans. So you need to really look a little bit more holistically, right? And what we have seen for us is that we started very much as a cacao company, and we're moved more to a kind of a value chain integrator and to be a bit more farmer-centric in our financing. So what does it mean? It means that not only financing cacao, but also other crops, cash crops, shorter-term crops. Cacao is a tree. It takes a long time to be productive. So you have a period in which you don't earn so much. And so, you know, also if that crop is new to the farmer, you really need to also complement it with things they do know. And so so basically our model moved from a crop cacao financing and buyback model to more of an agroforestry cacao-based model with multi-cropping. And I think that really is, I think, more of the future model, where we see that our whole single crop model is moving to the multi-crop model, and financing needs to be complete for that. It also means more funding needs to go into farmer extension. This is a key point, no? As you start to kind of upskill farmers and upskill farmers, that you need to be sure there is sufficient funding for farmer training, mentoring, coaching, especially now that you're doing multiple crops. So that's a little bit our journey, no? Very crop-centric, multi-crop, integrated financing, and more extensive farmer training support.
So Simon, you know, my understanding is that you've got this financing which enables farmers to afford the planting of the crop, but you also provide working capital.
We also provide working capital. We have two components to the financing, right? It's planting material, it's inputs, it is crop protection. I mean, it's a whole package. It is a multi-year disbursement, right? And then you have a repayment that goes together with the cash flow of the crop. So it's also, it's a loan. It's a 5-6 year loan. And then along the way, I mean, we do also, as the trading company, you provide the working capital to ensure that farmers can continue to buy and to implement through the season. That's kind of the short-term revolving capital. So it's a long-term and a short-term combined.
Sure. So just paint a picture for me. How does your grower compare with the typical Philippines cocoa grower in terms of yield?
Well, I mean, first of all, we're increasing footprint, right? So we're increasing the number of growers, right? We've planted an additional close to 20,000 new growers, right? So I think that's number one. So they have multiple crops. So these are coconut farmers. They have other, maybe fruit trees. So these are combined farms. The second thing is, of course, they have better access to nutrition. Their farms are multi-crop, therefore multi-layered, therefore also better resistant to climate gyrations, right? Droughts or excess floods or excess rain. So better climate resilience, better knowledge and training. And then of course, the original value proposition still very much holds true, which is we create a nice chocolate product, and because of that, we get a higher price, and we can give this back to farmers.
Okay, that's fantastic.
Good pricing.
Yeah. Okay, Simon, we'll come back to you later. That was very inspiring and interesting to see the similarities between you and Amrul on this case of building the capacity of farmers. Certainly, this whole issue in the longer term of building a cadre of younger, better, more professional farmers.
Absolutely, very important.
Yeah. So let me move to Ada. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Oh, yeah. So Covestro, I mean, you will probably be a new name to a lot of people, but you do things very interestingly and very differently, insofar as that you are a provider of materials, and you have a particular material which enables farmers to be able to solar dry and dry their product better. And therefore, so tell us a little bit about your company, just a thumbnail sketch, and then we'll get into more detail about how that's being rolled out.
Yeah. So Covestro is a world-leading supplier of high-tech polymer materials. So we do have this non-financial goal, that is 10 million people in underserved markets will benefit from our business solutions. So in order to achieve this goal, we have set up the inclusive business to tackle some of the social issues. And me, myself, is heading the inclusive business in the ASEAN region. Like you have mentioned, yes, we are a traditional material company, but we also dedicate ourselves in the inclusive business development.
Okay, and so tell us about, why did you decide to work with smallholder farmers? What do you do? And give us paint us a picture of somebody that's taken up your technology and what that has meant to them.
Yeah. So actually, we realize in the region, there are two main challenges. One, 14% of the food loss before retail. And I think the situation has worsened during the pandemic. And secondly, the majority of the agriculture community in ASEAN region actually belong to the low income group. And a lot of this is due to their low efficiency or inconsistent quality or low value add to their fresh product. So by looking at these two challenges, we want to come up with a solution that we can increase their income through a better post-harvest management. Therefore, as you know, we are a material company, so we know our material can be used in the innovative solutions in the agriculture sector. Then we team up with universities to come up with this solar dryer dome that some of you might be familiar, some of you might not be with. And on top of that, we really invest very heavily in the post-harvest drying knowledge. So that we can actually work with governments or organizations like Grow Asia, like AFA and GIZ, to really build these capacities into communities. Then they understand if they can better dry their product, they have better efficiency, and then they can also have a better quality, therefore sold at a better price. Yeah.
And so you've mapped out the theory. What's happening in practice?
In practice, I just gave you one example what happened in one of the recent project we completed with GIZ. So this is a coffee innovation fund. The traditional way of drying coffee beans, the loss is around 30 to 50%, that depends. By providing the solar dryer, that we can allow a high degree of control for the drying process and result in a more consistent quality. So how do we do this? We actually provide the material, and then we have local partners, and we also teach the communities how to build these solutions on the ground. And then we train the farmers what is a better quality mean for the coffee beans, and how can you better use our solution to reach a better quality. As a result, now coffee farmers from this program is able to sell coffee from previously under $1 to currently over $3. So now they have a better access to the higher end market. So this is just one of the examples that we work with.
That's a fantastic story. Yeah.
So also, I think during our work, we also realized that sometimes farmers or fishermen, they do not know that there are potential funding opportunities. So Covestro not only just build these hardwares or only teach or train. We sometimes also coach farmers or cooperatives or fishermen to access into some PPP funding, or also link them to potential investors, basically to make sure that their initial capital can be financed. And then in the long run, when they can have a better income from their producers, these money can be used to finance themselves in the future.
So two questions for you. What are the crops that are mainly being dried? And the second one was, just give us a sense of, how much does an individual solar power dryer cost for an individual smaller scale farmer?
We actually can use the solution for different producers. Like I mentioned, coffee, cacao, definitely. And we dry a lot of the fruits and vegetables and high value commodities such as pepper and herbs, medicines. For the fishery, we can dry squid, dry anchovies. So all kinds of the things that you can think of. And as come to the cost of a solar dryer, we actually co-finance with different organizations, and depending on the size of the solar dryer and the local construction places, so we have different sizes, and then of course the cost will vary. But this is definitely shared across the value chain that to make these solutions available. Actually, I just want to give everyone a brief idea on how it looks like in, I don't know, can you see my screen?
Not yet, but I think it would be a very good idea just to see what one of those dryers looks like.
How about now?
Oh, I can't yet. Is it?
You're not sharing your screen yet, Ada.
You're going to share your screen at the bottom?
Yeah, there we go.
Ah, now we're going there. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a greenhouse.
Yeah, it's almost like a greenhouse. As you can see, this is our material. And then this is one of the farmer that's using the dryer. This is actually pepper. And the location is in Vietnam. But we are actually active in 7 of the ASEAN countries.
Yeah, okay. And what is, I mean, I think the audience would be really like to know, when the sort of typical size that you sell or people make, what's the sort of average typical price of that? Is it a $10,000 piece, or is it $1,000, or is it $500?
I would say like the majority of the cooperatives, they would choose a small to medium size. And then roughly the cost is around what you have mentioned, about $10,000 US. And this is normally financed by sometimes even us, but we do not want to go with these corporate social responsibility type of activity. So we actually encourage investors, and we come up with certain financial plans so that this can be even in terms of sometimes like a leasing model or partially financed by different governments or organizations. So there are different models that we work with.
Okay.
This might sound expensive, but we also actually calculate for the smallholders and then really make sure financially this is actually makes sense for them.
Sure. I mean, it's very interesting. That the finance piece, the additional value added that you're talking about, and creating a higher quality product, which is certainly the way the ASEAN market is going. But also the way that actually what you said was so well aligned with what Simon and Sharon talked about, raising capacity. Actually, these are new skills that farmers need to take on, how do you use a solar dryer to improve the quality and control those kind of issues. So Aira, thanks very much. I hope we have a chance to get back to you. Let's move over to Chris from the Asian Farmers Association. Now we're working in the realm of people that are working directly with farmers and people that are raising that ability for people to understand what business models look like and how farmers can link with the market opportunities. So Chris, just give us a little sense of AFA, and then let's get into some of the interesting work that AFA has been doing.
Yes, thank you very much. I am right now speaking from Cebu City, Philippines. Thank you for inviting us to be part of this conversation. AFA is an association of farmers organizations in the Asia Pacific region. Right now, we have around 13 million family farmers involving 16 countries. While I'm the program director for cooperatives in AFA, but I am also the CEO of the Agri-Cooperatives Federation here in the Philippines. Luckily, we have two partners right here in the virtual room. One is Simon Kinemer, and also Cobistro. Simon Kinemer was one of those who give us the inspiration to start our cacao production. And in fact, we are right now 500 hectares. And this is in partnership with Lamak Multipurpose Cooperative and also with Cobistro. We are now piloting about 3 cooperative organizations here in the Philippines. Yes, so thank you very much. You know what, given the complexity and enormous challenges confronting the smallholders in the value chain, particularly the systemic barriers to farmers' income, the key to a meaningful partnership, because to us, partnership is a game-changing strategy, in fact. Either bilateral or multilateral partnership requires a collective action of the smallholders. This is why we get ourselves first organized at the primary level. That means at the village, municipality, and even at the province, and collectively set up at the national and linked to the regional level. That's why we have the AFA considered as our regional organizations. The first type of partnership is collaboration with public institutions and donor agencies, including service providers from the civil society organization sector. Really, the purpose is to build and increase our capacities in the form of knowledge, skills, and information technology, including access to land, access to finance, and access to market, and even access to government programs. It is, in our experience, it's very difficult to enter into partnership and even engaging the private companies if ourselves are not well organized and professionally set up as farmers organizations or as cooperatives. The second type of partnership is engagement with the private companies. particularly the lead firms of the value chain.
Mm-hmm.
The idea or main motivation for us is to reduce transaction cost and increase profit margin. In other words, that is the basis of our engagement with private companies. If these two things will not achieve, then we will say goodbye. You look for other partners. The so-called 3 Ps, that is public-private partnership, is not inclusive from the governance point of view. That is our perspective. Producers are treated as observers and mere beneficiaries of the partnership. The 4 Ps, that is public-private producer partnership, is much more supportive to the development of a resilient agricultural value chain.
Yep.
In other words, we are at the same playing field. In our experience, the farmers' organizations and cooperatives are increasingly involved in the development of the value chain as key players or actors. The more it becomes promising for us to have better livelihood, that in fact farming as a business undertaking rather than farming just for survival purposes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's our point. So it's, as I said, it's a game-changing strategy on our part, and in fact, it would be easier for us to achieve our purpose and really fulfill our aspirations as family farmers because of partnership. That is our experience, Graham. Thank you.
No, thank you, Chris. There was a lot of wisdom distilled into what you were saying, and it resonates with global experience too. There was a very interesting session in Africa when they talked to people that do like you do, which is link farmers to markets, and they asked them, what had they learned from it? And there was an interesting consensus, which was very much along the lines that you said. The first one being that actually government is normally part of the solution. The second one is that not all the farmers can be involved, but you are looking for that cadre of more commercial farmers. That unless everybody in the supply chain makes a profit, it won't be sustainable. And very interesting, your last point, which was, what you have to do is do the job properly. And the way they put it was, function is more important than form, so that you can work with smallholders, you can work with cooperatives, you can work with agribusiness. The thing you can't avoid is that every one of the steps in the professional supply chain has to be done properly. So we'll come back to you. Shivani, hello, long time no see. So Shivani has done a very interesting thing. Yeah, so Shivani with OECD and FAO have been coming together to say, look, what can we do about the existing supply chains to make them more sustainable? And they've been trialing and testing this in the ASEAN region and also globally. So Shivani, just give us a little thumbnail sketch of that plan, but let's get in a little bit more detail about what's come out of the pilots that you've run in ASEAN, and how do they compare with the other ones that you've done globally. Over.
Great, thank you, Graham. Good morning, everybody. Very pleased to be here, and thank you for inviting us to this panel. So what I wanted to speak to you today about is the OECD FAO guidance. In a nutshell, it's really, and I'm going to pick up on a number of themes that the other speakers have touched upon, and it's really about collaboration. And what the guidance does is that it pulls together the many different standards. And I know for many businesses, there seems to be a plethora of standards out there to help all of you, but it's not super clear how these all fit together. The guidance brings together these different standards like the CFS-RIE principles, etc., all the standards to do with expectations on responsible business, and particularly in the agricultural sector. And the big value add is that it puts forward a framework for due diligence in the supply chain and looking at a comprehensive look at all the different risks that you could potentially have, and also the steps that companies can take to actually be more inclusive, to address the systemic issues of poverty, for example. and to, in this time of COVID as well, to actually, through understanding their supply chains, build resilience into the supply chains. One of the things I think that's very, very a real value add is that the guidance itself brings together, and this is some of the work that we've been doing, Graham, in the implementation of the guidance, is that it really brings together the full value chain. And we often talk about supply chain, and we're talking about farmers, very, very important. But we need to remember that when you talk about the agribusiness sector, there's a multiplicity of players, and it's really great to see some of them actually here on today's panel. I know, Ada, you're talking about the folks that actually provide assistance, financing. We heard earlier from Simon in terms of financing. Investors are a key part of this. So what the guidance does is that it looks at the full value chain, from investors, input suppliers, producers, food, beverage, traders, all the way up to the retailers, and part of the chain. And this is important because you need folks to really work together. And we often talk about working together, but you'd be surprised that it doesn't really happen so often. I mean, that was one of the funny things we learned with a global pilot. We have a lot of these large companies, and I was surprised. I thought that they were constantly talking to each other, and they talk to their customers, they talk to maybe their immediate suppliers. But there's often a lot of shared learnings that, many companies are operating, for example, in the same region. They're facing similar issues. How do you engage with the local, with the farmers effectively? How do we engage with civil society on the ground? Who are we speaking with in terms of worker unions or representatives? And there's real room for deeper collaboration. So that was one of the things that we learned. I mean, collaboration is really part of the DNA, and I feel a bit embarrassed in some ways. I mean, the OECD, we're listening to folks here who are really on the ground. They're in the first range of direct interaction. I would say for us, our value add at the OECD and at other international organizations, it's at the more the standards level. We have, so we're all speaking from the same framework. And then the opportunity to bring the different groups together, I think that's also very valuable. And as I said as well, in the implementation program. I don't want to take too much. I know we're pressed for time, so I guess you have follow-up questions.
So the experience from Asia, what are the sort of 3 takeaways that pilot has taught you? I know I've heard that what you were able to do was exactly your point, was that actually by getting those disparate companies in the same room, they actually, there was a tremendous amount of mutual support that provided motivation for them to move towards this more inclusive business model. But
I think that's one of the big things we saw. So we did 2 pilots. We did one at a global level in 2018, 2019, and I'll share with folks all the links, so you'll get access to it. The Southeast Asia pilot, we're just wrapping it up right now. Again, we had about 20 plus companies in Southeast Asia, very disparate. About 40% of them were SMEs. So we're talking about relatively small companies, but they were not individual farmers. So these were actual companies, and across different different supply chains and along the full value chain. So very heterogeneous. One of the things that we saw is that in Southeast Asia, I'm going to compare Southeast Asia on the global side. There was a focus, and we used our guidance. So the different steps of the guidance. What are they doing? How are they understanding these concepts? One of the things was that in Asia, Southeast Asia, the focus tends to be on, I would say, more technical issues like the environment, as opposed to something like human rights. So on the social side, they're still lacking, and that's I think it's definitely a work in progress. That's what we're aiming for. Like the global pilot, we found that many companies, and this is natural and normal, many companies do depend on certification systems to help them in understanding the supply chain and mapping the supply chain. So we see that the OECD is also cognizant that not all certification systems are necessarily meeting the same outcomes or sort of levels of quality, let's say. So there's room there for improvement. I think the biggest learning was really, again, this collaboration and linking up along the value chain. Again, I mean, it was an initial pilot. Many of the participants felt it was very helpful to actually have these sort of opportunities, and really it's to the EU that we actually were able to do this. And I'm learning from these sort of work here, and if I'd be very open to hearing from people on the panel, but also in the audience, ideas that you have, because we at the OECD certainly we will be staying in the region, and we'd want to see what are the ways that you think, what are the next steps, what are the areas we can go forward in. If you have ideas of what we could do better, please let us know. I've got some ideas where I think we should be going, particularly at the regional level. But I'd be very open to using this opportunity, hearing from you as well.
Okay. So Shivazani, thank you very much for that. I mean, it's great work that you're doing there.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of questions in the chat. You let me know and let us know how you want to start.
Just answer as many as you can, I think, you will see that Ada and others have done. So we've got 4 minutes left, which it probably doesn't give us enough time, sadly, to go back to and sort of get engagement of conversation. So I just thought, what were the takeaways and lessons for me from, the collective wisdom of the 5 of you? And one was this, that we've seen consistently that all of them, every single one of those 5, were talking about capacity building, that this need to raise the capacity, the standards, the insights, the professionalism of a farming sector. And we saw that right across everything from Amur Rice to Simon's operation, to what Ada was doing, to what Chris was doing, and what Shivazani has been doing, but at a kind of higher level or more business level. Then there was the piece around finance, and we saw that, particularly with Simon and with Ada, was the importance of being able to get finance to enable those kind of investments, those smart investments, which enable people to either have a very productive cocoa crop or being able to produce value-added activities. Then there was a very interesting, I'm very interested in the point that Chris made, and we've certainly seen that when we've had the discussions about what works and doesn't work in value chains, that certainly the voice that is sometimes left out and has to be part of that dialogue, it's not just a public-private sector dialogue, it's a public-private sector producer civil society dialogue. And if you can get that conversation to work, then the balance of probabilities, you can make better decisions because you have all those different people thinking about it and coming from different angles. And if you can get them to align on the same idea of what success looks like, then you have a chance of making it work. But what is also true is that partnerships, people think that the partnerships are like motherhood and apple pie. They're a good thing, and then there's the assumption they're easy to do. They're not. The science is about half of partnerships fail, and mainly because people don't realize how much effort you've got to put in to make a partnership work. And then there was the sort of market linkages, and the point being that actually all of you have been talking about systems which improve the profitability of farmers. That they're new opportunities, but also that everybody in that supply chain has also got to make a profit. I know that one of our country partnerships constantly makes this point, is that some people in business are putting their careers on the line to do inclusive business, to do sustainability. But if their bosses don't see that those things actually provide at least an equal profit with the way that they're already doing it, their careers would go down the tubes. And I think what we have globally is that there is a portion of companies who are still stuck on the thing around, it's just about the bottom line. There's another group which is actually very interested in sustainability and inclusive business models, but they're watching on the sidelines to see if it works. They're not going to gamble on it. And then all of the people that have spoken today are in that first group. And those are the group that are boldly and courageously going out to develop and fine tune and make those inclusive business models work. And I'm super impressed when I come across those people. And when we ask them what they want to learn from one another. They want to find partners that they can work with. And in the longer term, they're looking to be able to influence the policy dialogue by bringing their experience to that table and opening the eyes of policymakers that what they're doing actually makes a lot of sense, not only on the profitability, but also all those other things around social inclusion and environmental. I think that brings me exactly to around about, yes, my clock says 1:30. So we brought the train back in on time. Over to the organizers. Irene, and over to you.
Thank you, Graham, so much for leading this wonderful discussion. We are now, thank you panelists and moderators for this valuable dialogue. We are now going to have a 1.5 hour lunch pause and return at 2 p.m. Bangkok time in room 1 for the next session, which is session 3. Similarly to the switch that we made at 10:45 a.m. Bangkok time, the link that you will need to access in order to go to room 1 for session 3 can be found in your participant guide. It will also be pasted right now into the chat. Let's give it a second for the message to show up. Thank you, Dory. So the link for room 1, which you will go to at 2 p.m. Bangkok time, is now in the chat. Please go ahead and copy and paste this link so that you can use it for session 3 at 2 p.m. Bangkok time. This room, the room that you are in now, will remain open until 2 p.m. Bangkok time, but there will be no sessions happening in this room. We're just going to keep it open so that you know if you come to this place, this room, where to direct yourself to. Once again, to make sure that you know where you need to be at 2 p.m. Bangkok time, please have your participant guide open. That's the best way to navigate the summit seamlessly. And we will see you in room 1 at 2 p.m. Bangkok time. Have a wonderful lunch and see you all again shortly. Take care.